Good evening and welcome back. Our last item of the evening is item 4.2, the report of Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee and the Charter Review Commission Public Safety Recommendations. Thanks to members of the community who've come out to speak. We'll first have a presentation from staff and then we'll go right to public comment. Hi, Angel.
Hello, Mayor, Council. Here in the box, we have myself, Angel Rios, Deputy City Manager. We have Peter Hamilton, Executive Assistant to the City Manager's Office, and Chief Mata, and Lieutenant Steve Donahue. And we'll actually refer this over to Poncho and his team, who is online on Zoom, and they will make their presentation to the council.
Thank you. And Poncho, are you with us? Poncho, are you able to hear me right now?
I don't see him.
Okay, we'll try to find him and promote him. Poncho, if you have a different name on your Zoom ID, maybe you could just raise your hand. While we're trying to find Poncho, I'll just say thank you to Poncho and to everyone who participated in the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee. We know there were many, many hours of discussion and inquiry, and we appreciate the commitment of our community to continually find ways to improve how we are serving our community. I'm still not seeing Poncho.
Can I do a roll call, please?
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you, Tony. Sorry, I just skipped right by it.
Jimenez,
Present.
Corrales,
Here.
Cohen,
Here.
Carrasco, Davis,
Here.
Esparza,
Here.
Foley,
Here.
Mahan,
Here.
Jones,
Present.
Liccardo.
Present.
Thank you.
I do know that Fred Ferrer is here, who is the chair of the Charter Review Commission. And I know we also have public safety recommendations from them as well. Should we perhaps go to Fred first, Angel? Which would you prefer?
Well, Mayor, they actually had a presentation that captured the reimagined presentation. I am texting him right now to see if I can.
Okay.
We give it a few minutes. Apologize for the.
Let me say then
delay
also thank you to Fred and to everyone who served on the Charter Review Commission. I know we reviewed some of their
Poncho's
recommendations already. Oh, we do have Poncho. Okay, welcome, Poncho.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies, we're very excited to actually be here, and we have some of my other colleagues should be joining if they haven't already. So, but we're really excited. Can we jump right into the presentation?
Please do, and thank you again for all the time and energy that you and so many members of the community invested in this effort.
Fantastic. So let me pull up our deck. But first and foremost, I want to thank the City Council for your support of this community-led process. And we are delighted to be able to share some of the results of the work that we've been doing over the last 8 months. So first off, I wanted to again thank also the members of the committee that have played such a key role in helping develop this. So the goal of our presentation tonight is to cover 4 main components: the context in which we started doing the work of the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee, briefly discuss the process, but spend a little bit of time unpacking a portion of the recommendations. You have the full report, which includes about both the 59 recommendations from the committee and 38 recommendations from the Youth Council. And we'll briefly, talk about next steps, about how we hope to be able to partner with you into the future. But to lead off, I wanted to make sure that there are about 5 takeaways that we want to make sure that we're leaving with you today. First, and most importantly, that San Jose has a long history of reform movements when it comes to addressing issues around police reform, addressing issues of police brutality and other issues around bias in law enforcement. But that was not the entire focus of our work. Our focus is really to think about how we get beyond the challenges that persist of bias and trauma in our system, but for us to think about what could it look like what could be the kind of proposals or ideas that we could develop that can make our community safer. And among our key findings and opportunities that we see are the opportunity for us to have the right expert perform the right job to address some of the conditions. Are there more effective, efficient, and equitable ways that we could actually work together to actually make our community, our San Jose community, safer? We also feel it's really critical. Another key takeaway was we need to address the root causes of crime. Wanting to make sure that our communities are safer in the first place. Prevention is really key. It's really what the community wants us to be able to do, and what could be some of the pathways to move forward. And also, while we understand that that law enforcement plays a very critical role in helping to communities keep our communities safe, we need our system has to be held accountable. There is no we cannot move forward without an effective level of oversight and accountability for our systems. So tonight we're going to be covering, you've already received the report. It is, it is public, and really grateful for all the work that went into it. There were hundreds of ideas that were considered. We're presenting a handful of them relatively to today in these 7 categories. But before we launch into that, we want to talk a little bit about context. Darcy, you're on mute.
Thank you. Hello, council members and Mayor Ricardo. Thank you for having us today. We just wanted to bring some context and remind everybody that it has been 715 days and counting since the murder of George Floyd, and that our city has embarked on this big effort, and the time that we spent putting this report together in unity and solidarity with what's happening across the country, and recognizing that it's very much still happening here in our city too, and that there's immense pain and harm that's happening, and urgency for us to act now. And the great thing about this evening is you're hearing a report that is going to give us the opportunity to take some real action toward healing and unity in our city.
So again, 2 years ago, we had the conversation that happened at the council in response to what we were seeing around the country, and the uprising that was happening both here and everywhere was the call to action to the council to develop a process to redirect resources away from policing towards other community-based solutions. This effort needs to incorporate and center the voices of individuals traditionally left out of our decision-making in partnership with diverse community-based organizations that have long served and represented the voices of those community members harmed by systemic racism. When the city's process that emerged about several months later came to fruition in the spring of last year, it ultimately dissolved in around May of 2021. But we partnered with you to develop the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee, a community-led process that, with your support in June of last year, we began to appoint members in July. We began our work in August of 2021 and began with our study sessions and our work and our research, which we'll cover a little bit, is covered in the report. And in October, after the city appointed a number of representatives from both the Neighborhoods Commission and other neighborhood representatives, that is when we appointed subcommittees, 5 subcommittees: alternative responses, promotion and prevention, accountability and reform, a steering committee, and the youth council was formally seated. Subcommittees began their work in November of last year. Recommendations were developed, and the youth council began its work in December. We were submitting recommendations and working on them after hearing the public testimony and lived experience voices. And we had public input hearings in February and March. Our recommendations were finalized in that time frame. Last month, we were able to finish developing the report, voted on the recommendations, and we're here tonight to present the full report. But again, the context came from being able to do some investigation and presentations and lived experience testimony from individuals that are impacted in these various ways, hearing everything from the history of policing reform, hearing from the experience of individuals with mental health challenges or mental health consumers, individuals with disabilities, survivors of gender-based violence, individuals who are unhoused, the experiences of Black, Latinx, API, LGBTQIA communities. The youth council gave their presentation, and we had study sessions around traffic safety, learning from other processes that have happened around the country, and then seeing some of the work that had happened with the people's budget. All that input helped inform the recommendations that we're presenting to you this evening. And these, while there were the 3 subcommittees that help work on these, they're divided for the purposes of clarity into 7 sections in this report. The first section I'm gonna dive into, which is talking about alternative safety responses. Again, this was part of the original charge of the committee and the original committee that was set up by the city to actually explore, are there opportunities for us to find the right professionals to deal with the right challenges? And to lead off with talking about one of the key featured recommendations that we want to do, Don Taylor from Pacific Clinics is going to share a little bit about some of the work and the first proposal from the Reimagining Public Safety process.
Thanks, Pancho, and good evening, council members and mayor. I'm Don Taylor, the executive director with Pacific Clinics, which is formerly Uplift Family Services. So we're a behavioral health, foster care, and school-based provider in the county. We run the county youth mobile crisis and crisis stabilization services, and as well as the soon-to-be launched new trust program in conjunction with Momentum for Health and Home First. So with the alternative to safety responses, and specifically recommendation 1 and 2, that includes the expansion of trust and the coordination of 988. I wanted to share a little bit more about trust as a service, which was initially visioned through the Santa Clara County Behavioral Health MHSA innovation process, which had a pretty intensive community stakeholder engagement process to get to where we are now. The services themselves, trust services, they're 24/7 community-based response service utilizing a van, responding to all emergent mental health needs in the community via a team that includes a first aid responder, peer support, and a mental health worker. There are 3 focused Santa Clara County teams, 1 in Gilroy, 1 in North County, and then 1 in San Jose. The San Jose focus area is in East San Jose around the 95122, 95116, and 95112 area codes. And the services themselves will be tied into what's currently being developed, the 988 central response line for mental health crises. The zip codes correspond to portions of District 7, 5, and 3. So an expanded partnership with the city of San Jose will further support the non-law enforcement response through the city, allowing law enforcement to focus on crime and safety response, while our teams are able to focus on the mental health response. Of note is our current crisis services currently have standing meetings with law enforcement jurisdictions where we share data, identify trends, and troubleshoot. Trust will be able to leverage some of that. And the trust localized response design, again, better targets local needs and provides quicker response time. More localized teams will greater support the mental health access, as well as free up police resources for other responses. There are other cities in Santa Clara County that are also exploring investing in this service and expanding in their cities. So as the provider and a resident of San Jose District 1, I hope you consider these recommendations and appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I'm just going to briefly breeze through a couple more of these recommendations. A similar model that we'd like to see explored in one of our recommendations 3 and 4 are talking about homelessness, having an alternative homelessness response system that could be deployed. We have a series of recommendations around traffic safety, including an expansion of the work that's happening with the Vision Zero process to be able to look at traffic safety by design, while perhaps continuing to use law enforcement to actually deal with hazardous and speeding and reckless driving types of work. Could we explore different alternative personnel measures to be able to enhance traffic safety, looking at stopping pretextual stops that typically target Black and brown drivers, and being able to look at other types of modalities that we can kind of keep our traffic safety better, and using different types of personnel for events that could be more efficient, more effective, and certainly not needing and preserving the use of law enforcement for other types of resources. So a number of recommendations there, including perhaps have San Jose joining in some state legislation to give us some flexibility to be able to do that work differently. We have a series of other recommendations around being able to come up with alternative responses to gender-based violence, especially for low-level types of incidents, and restorative justice type of work or programs, and partnering with individuals that are survivors of intimate partner violence and other forms of gender-based violence to be the ones helping to guide and lead decision-making about how we can come up with more appropriate responses. A community campaign that we call We Keep Us Safe campaign, which would be investing training and resources into neighborhoods and community-based organizations to deal with de-escalation and connect people up with some of these alternative systems. And then an expansion of the community service officer program. The community service officer program is one that is potentially underutilized. About some of the most recent data that we had may not be the most up to date, but about 40% of incidents or calls for service that CSOs were eligible for were not taken by CSOs, but by law enforcement. And there might be a better deployment of law enforcement to other things. So an expansion of that program was part of one of the other recommendations that we had.
This next section is called Support for Impacted Families. A key component of promoting safer communities in our city is addressing underlying needs of those most impacted by trauma in all of its forms in order to stop the cycle of violence in our city. I'm going to highlight one of the proposals that's listed here called a trauma relief fund. This trauma relief fund would set up a fund in the city of San Jose that would address the needs of many victims and survivors of violence, trauma, and harm in our city who don't have access to the traditional routes of response and resource, either because of the perpetrator-victim binary or because of a host of other reasons that they may not be able to access traditional victim services. This fund recognizes that violence is violence, harm is harm, and all of it is problematic for our city. This fund would also be detached from the criminal justice system and would be developed with input from survivors of violence. The fund would also establish wraparound mental health treatment and social support services for survivors of violence. This fund would, in particular, also support survivors of police violence and families of those that we've lost to police violence. Also in this section is a guaranteed basic income for survivors of gender-based violence, recognizing that often it is the economic barriers that keep people from leaving dangerous situations. A reparations pilot for women of color in particular who've been impacted by the incarceration of a loved one, and a proposal called Prevent Exits to Homelessness, where the city of San Jose will work with other agencies to develop housing and supportive services to ensure that individuals leaving incarceration, jail, and prison are not released back into homelessness. The next section is called Improved Community Conditions. Roots of racialized disparities in community safety and stability can be found in core conditions facing different neighborhoods for generations. Much of our conversations, just as in the slide before, we talked about addressing the root causes of harm and the root causes of trauma and really helping our city to heal harm in all of its form. This section talks a little bit about those root causes as well, and that our pursuit of justice, our pursuit of public safety should also be one that is a pursuit of just social conditions for residents of our city. So in this section, you'll find a call for some urgent action around affordable housing, a greater focus and resources spent on eliminating wage theft and increasing the living wage in our city. There's also a gross receipts tax to make sure that we're able to properly fund these services. And there's another proposal here called Campaign Zero. This proposal would initiate a visioning process to identify strategies that ensure our community are safer by addressing root causes of inequities, violence, and trauma, including benchmarking of success driven by community voices. Ultimately, this proposal is a step toward the direction of not leaning on policing as being the sole tool that we use to ensure public safety or to move toward public safety, but instead allowing us to vision and benchmark and draw out a plan where we are properly investing in eliminating root causes of harm and violence in our city, where we're properly investing based on community will and community listening sessions in creating just social conditions, and over time reducing our need for police officers in areas where they're unnecessary.
So this next section that we're going to be sharing has to do with civilian oversight and accountability. So the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee was deeply involved and invested in the Charter Review Commission's work. And for the first 3 recommendations, we are concurring with the Charter Review Commission. So I'm going to kick it over to Fred.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Frederick Ferrer, the chair of the San Jose Charter Review Commission. And I've spoken to you before in terms of the other recommendations we made, but in terms of accountability, I'm honored to join this group tonight to be able to see how our 2 groups of work has really dovetailed. We had commissioners who were very concerned about police accountability. And in our report, we have over 30 pages of resources and sources and references. So it's one of the most well-documented questions that we undertook in terms of reviewing what the charter might need in terms of increasing accountability in terms of our police. Our 3-part recommendation is first to create and add a police commission to the city charter. Secondly, convert the Office of the Independent Police Auditor to an independent investigation department with the powers of subpoena and full and unredacted access to all documents in the possession of the San Jose Police Department. And then third, creating an Office of the Inspector General to assist the Police Oversight Commission in conducting reviews of patterns, practice, trends, systems, and policies at the police department. As you can see, the work that the Reimagining Committee has been doing is really looking at this broad set of recommendations in all these different areas. But if without accountability, then these reforms, I think, will fall flat in terms of really building the trust within the community and maintaining the trust. And that sustaining is really a key piece to this. I'm happy to answer questions after our presentation about the Commission's recommendations, but those are the recommendations that we came up with in terms of increasing accountability for our police department.
In addition to the work of the Charter Review Commission, one of our subcommittees delved deeply into civilian oversight and accountability, and we're not going to cover most of the recommendations that were done, but just to highlight a few of them around both police conduct and oversight included. One of them has to do with arbitration. Certainly, we heard a number of public testimonies about the impact that people have seen, especially loved ones who have lost loved ones of those who have been lost to police violence, that we would want to see that binding arbitration would be something that could be phased out of disciplinary and termination processes for police conduct, and having at least much more visibility in terms of what's happening with that and the ability for the city to appeal to state court around these particular issues. So we understand that's a meet and confer item, but it was something that was brought up by many of the family members in a very impactful way about what has happened and the difficulty in being able to hold individuals where there has been both in terms of very difficult and heartbreaking situations that have happened with situations, but also making sure that discipline can actually be meted out. So on the next section, we talked a little bit about police conduct, and so we have a number of recommendations here. And again, I'm not going to be able to go through all of them, but a few of them that stand out included the opportunity and necessity for us to really look at some of our policies around searches. Right now, we would like to see changes in terms of police being able to identify why a search is actually being conducted, and information that can be shared by SJPD when they're actually conducting a search about people's rights and the process that they have in terms of being able to be subjected to that search. Similarly, what I mentioned before about arbitration, looking at critical incidents and the process that happens. we actually heard some incredibly important testimony from families that had lost loved ones, and what had happened, the conduct that happened in the immediate aftermath of those, where family members were brought in, and were brought in and interrogated about the mental health status and other histories, very personal histories of those, and the way that the law enforcement was actually trying to shape a narrative, both the use of video and how it's presented and other types of information that in many ways re-traumatized the families. And we'd very much like to see some changes in that conduct. And one last point that we want to bring up had to do with drug testing. In the immediate aftermath of critical incidents, we would very much like to see drug testing of the folks that were involved in that, the law enforcement involved in that, and spoke to the press conference that we heard last week from Mayor Liccardo and Chief Mata about potentially incorporating random testing, in terms of the next round of bargaining with, in terms of the contract. So we stand in strong support of that. So the next section, we're talking about personnel. Sandra.
Hi, good evening. I'm Sandra Asher. I'm on the RIPS committee, amplifying the voices of the disability community as a board member at Parents Helping Parents. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the personnel recommendations. So how do you change a culture? Based on over 20 years of experience in senior HR positions with several tech companies across the Valley, I've learned that it starts with who you hire, how you train, and what you reward. So we propose a number of hiring recommendations that will improve the mix of the police department so that they better reflect the diversity within our city, while strengthening our screening and qualification criteria to ensure we only hire the top candidates. In our listening sessions, in particular with the disability community, there was a lack of trust that the police could keep their disabled members of their families safe, even though we know there are many agencies and partnerships between law enforcement and the disability community that conduct training. So our recommendations in this area focus on moving away from the warrior mentality, where every person poses a deadly threat to officers, and towards recognizing the complexity of individuals and enhancing the qualifications required to become a training officer who's given the honor to train others. We're also recommending holding training officers accountable for the results of their training programs. There's also a recommendation that asks to delve into discriminatory behavior within the department and to work together to reorganize as necessary to provide the structure within the department necessary to end that discriminatory behavior. Next slide, please. When it comes to enforcement priorities, this is another area where we have an opportunity to make sure we're engaging the right professional with the right outcome that we desire. We have another number of recommendations in this area. Police should be focusing on violent crime rather than enforcing laws that criminalize homelessness. Our city should be directing resources to supports and services rather than criminalizing the unhoused. Other priorities in this area, or depriorities, are around ending the SRO program in our schools, and our youth council will speak more to this in their presentation.
In conclusion, just want to remind you about the urgency and opportunity. Our committee went through a thorough and very thoughtful process over the past months. And as we heard lived testimony after lived testimony and experience after experience, we understood that the need is only growing and that there is so much work to do in order to heal in our city. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to make these great leaps and bounds toward a more just and safe city. And I also want to just mention that we took great care to center community in every single one of our meetings, making sure that people who were most impacted by the gaps in policing, by the gaps in public safety in our city, were not only centered, but were leading these conversations. We also took great care and time to have focus groups and other public hearings to make sure that we were making it as accessible and the report is accessible, the process is accessible to people in the community who wanted to lift up their experiences and voices into this process.
And reiterating one of the main points is that it only makes sense to have the right person to do the right job. And we are excited to be able to partner with you, with the city through this process to try to identify those correct interventions. So we're actually utilizing law enforcement for what we really need them for, and getting the right professionals and experts to actually deal with the situations as they arise. We also feel like it's really critical for there to be additional investments in addressing the root causes of trauma and violence in our community, making sure that that becomes an area of focus for our work. The city has a tremendous track record in doing so, and partners in the community-based organization community with the County of Santa Clara, being able to expand those kind of partnerships to make sure that we're actually not leaning too much on law enforcement to actually deal with the consequences of so many societal ills that we're challenged to deal with.
We also know that it's just common sense that we have strong policies of oversight and are holding our systems accountable. If we want to have trust between the police department and the community they serve, then there must be accountability. That's just common sense. We also are looking forward to the next steps and working together with the city council, your staffs, and the youth council to flesh out how we move these recommendations into action. We are happy to answer any questions that you have about the policies presented tonight or anything in our recommendation packet after we have our presentation from the Youth Council, who's up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel Young. I am a native of San Jose, and I am the local and statewide policy director of Lead Filipino and a member on the Youth Reimagining Public Safety Committee representing Filipino youth here in San Jose. So we just want to have a content warning about what we'll be discussing today, and as it has graphic discussions about police violence. Before we start off, we want to take a moment to recognize the victims of police brutality in San Jose. Thomas Wynn, Joseph Torino, Philip Watkins, Mirza Tatlik, Efren Esquivel, Diana Shulman, Francis Colon, Byron Rosas, Mark Morosky, Scott Dunham, Ronald Adutto, Andrew Joseph Roberts, Anthony Nunes, Albert Manuel Vasquez, Matthew Castillo, Anthony Guzman Lopez, Adrian Rivera, David Tovar Jr., Elias Meja, Richard Jaquez, Jennifer Vasquez, Armando Salvaterra, Jacob Dominguez, Francis de la Cruz, Leonel Arcavedo, and anyone else that we haven't been able to get their names of. So the main focuses that the Youth Committee wanted to bring to you all today, Mayor and Council, is first, police accountability, second, police relations and outreach, third, police force and tactics, and finally, alternative systems. To begin, the Youth Council centered ourselves around 3 values that we want to emphasize. The first being, we wanted to build a community where everyone feels safe by stopping violence, physicals, murders by police, and also emotional, gaslighting, re-traumatizing, and how police don't know how to interact with marginalized communities. Next, we wanted to focus on access and how we can implement policy ideas of housing, necessities to live, and allowing people to live in the comfort of their own home. Finally, we wanted to work on solidarity, where we inspire other people, such as other youth in our own community, while focusing on strengthening the relationship between our own communities and the police department. So first, we'll begin with police accountability. And with that, I'd like to introduce my partner, Jariah, to take on this next part.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jariah Haug, and I've come to you today as a member of the NAACP Youth Chapter. I was born and raised here in San Jose from District 4, and so I just wanted to highlight a couple of things on the state side on what we can do for police accountability. So to start off, we want to ask the following questions answered from the city. How is San Jose implementing these state public safety laws, and what is the timeline? We wanted to highlight two bills that passed this past year in the state legislature, SB 2 and SB 490. SB 2 is a bill that introduces a new process of investigation and suspension of those without the fitness of a person to be an officer. We urge the city to utilize these processes to decertify officers that have committed abuses of power, exuded racial bias, and other serious misconduct. We also want to urge the city to immediately ban knee to neck holds or any carotid holds or any holds that restrict breathing. SJPD has a history of using these holds, and we want to ensure that the implementation of AB 490 is swift and effective throughout the force. So next thing that we wanted the Office of the Administration, Policy, and Intergovernmental Relations to prioritize and support these current bills, AB 1947 and AB 988. AB 1947 would ensure that police departments can properly recognize, report, and respond to hate crimes. San Jose particularly saw a surge in Asian hate crimes and is one of the most diverse cities in the state. So we want to ensure that this bill will be codified and ensure that hate crimes are codified and officers can respond properly to these hate crimes as well. And AB 988 would designate 988 as a 3-digit number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And using this phone number would not only lighten the casework for SJPD and the police departments around the state, but it would also alleviate the stress of those experiencing a mental health crisis to contact one short phone number.
Moving out of the state, we would ask the city of San Jose to take a stance on our Senator Alex Padilla's bill of S2103, the Accountability for Federal Law Enforcement Act, which would allow individuals to use federal law enforcement officers, and it also makes federal law enforcement agencies liable for the conduct of an officer, regardless of the officer having qualified defense or not, as this is currently something that they are protected under, and by doing so will allow people to keep law enforcement agencies accountable for anything that they have experienced or occurred, whether that be through their arrest or through their interactions with an officer.
Our group also came up with multiple ideas that'll keep SJPD accountable to our community. And so one of those ideas is to incorporate community groups like this into the auditing process when SJPD is being audited. Another idea that we had was, instead of the police chief being appointed, it be a position that is elected by the people of San Jose. And this race in particular would have to follow strict guidelines. For example, we want the money raised from these campaigns to be grassroots. We want it to align with mayoral races to increase turnout. And the city of Santa Clara already does this, and this will increase the accountability of the police chief. And also we wanted to highlight that we want the candidates who would run to have certain qualifications in order to run. They would have to have a certain ranking in the force or other qualifications deemed necessary by the city council. We also wanted to highlight that we want more increased transparency on what's on the budget. We want more engagement with the use on what's in the budget, what's the description of the budget, and just more engagement on that end. We understand that there are some hearings about the budget, but the youth in particular doesn't really understand the process. And we would just hope that more budget transparency is given to the youth as well.
Moving on with accountability, we also believe in more civilian auditing and creating an independent auditing office separate from the IPA. How this would work is that currently the IPA is the only office that was chartered to audit SJPD. And although the office was established in 1993 and chartered in 96, community trust and relations remains decreased. So as police brutality has continued over 3 decades, it is clear that the IPA needs support through other veins, hence why we recommend the need for community civilian audit and oversight group. Due to the top-down nature of the IPA, the group we are proposing will be made up of community-based organization representatives akin to the Reimagining Public Safety Committee, those experiencing homelessness, those with disabilities, and finally the non-English speaking population. In doing so, these representatives and employees will accompany officers independently to report and record police interactions before, during, and after an interaction. Additionally, the group will monitor SJPD's budget to audit that SJPD is funded with what they need and if funds can be allocated elsewhere. These positions should be paid and supported, not incorporated through the city. In a similar vein, we'd like to also advocate for a youth auditing group. And through this youth auditing group, we are seeing it to be akin to our own Youth Reimagining Public Safety Committee. In addition to the Adult Civilian Auditing and Oversight Group, we believe that this would benefit in drafting and creating law enforcement proposals and making budget proposals and suggestions for the audit group to work with. Moreover, youth members can write opinions on police reports and actions to give public perspectives on how the police have been doing and what is and is not working. Youth have historically been excluded from the policy-making realm, and by having this group be established, youth will have a better opportunity to make change and be involved in civics. Lastly, because a lot of youth and especially Gen Z are always concerned about what's in it for them, we also believe that this should be a stipend or a paid position for youth to be compensated for their time. Moving away from police accountability, we also believe in improving police relations and their outreach. For here, current police outreach is that SJPD is currently involved and responsible for various community services that aren't just enforcing the law. They sometimes act as crossing guards, safety education, hosting the Teen Kids program, which allows patrol officers to visit elementary schools with 6 weekly visits, focusing on crime prevention and youth safety with an emphasis on gang prevention education. They're also crime prevention specialists, as they're also involved in a variety of youth and school-based programming presenting violence reduction, drug, and gang awareness prevention, as the SJPD site says. Oftentimes, the framework of police-community relations is such that the burden is placed on the community to like and appreciate police as they are, rather than for police to like and appreciate the community as they are. In other words, community members are forced to appreciate police and not have an opinion if they are to like them or not. Only in totalitarian regimes do we as the youth find that the narrative of community relations and safety centers around the comfort and safety of those in governance as opposed to those who elected them. We really do not want to continue this gaslighting. Thus, we determined that an appropriate and democratic route to take is for the police and those in power to center the community's efforts and concerns in their approaches, actions, and decisions. It makes no sense to us youth to expect those most targeted and oppressed by police should be the ones who have to change their perspectives while facing the same systemic oppressions, as it would be abusive. For police to have a better relation with the community, police are the ones who need to humanize and understand their community. Moving on, we would like to understand the root causes of where gangs do come from to discuss these programs. Currently, the focus on crime prevention centers around gangs, though in our own discussions with our peers, we found that gangs function as a socializing institution when other institutions fail, such as a poor family support structure. Gangs provide protection, fun, respect, financial opportunity, influence from a friend, and pop culture, and hence why these street gangs attract youth, because it meets a youth's social needs instead of policing where they feel less safe to be around. So we'd like to flip the script on this. We believe that police relations are framed in a way where the burden of compromise and acceptance is placed on the community. It is an outreach without conformity. So we propose that we'd like to remove police from community events and replace with private security that does not have armrests, while also increasing advertising of already public meetings so more community members are aware of the important decision-making that works into the policing within their community. A more trauma-informed approach would be for police and those in power to center the community's efforts, comforts, and concerns in their approaches, actions, and decisions. Outreach with the focus on this conformity is an essence that takes away from the fact that officers as individual humans partake in and reinforce a collective which regularly oppresses those already most vulnerable and entirely dismisses not just the history of police as a white supremacist institution, but also their continued engagement as one in many respects. Moreover, when we discuss youth outreach, as I mentioned earlier with Teen Kids, officers often go to schools just to focus on gang prevention and nothing else. So we believe that we have to divest from jails and carceral systems, as if keeping youth out of prison is a priority, then the district attorney and SJPD should be removed entirely to not make these kids live in more fear than they already do. Investing behavioral health resources for students instead, and removing SROs and SJPD from all San Jose Unified School District campuses and events and replace them with private security would instead make youth feel more comfortable going to school and in their own skin. Moreover, we believe in having more career-centered workshops, such as maybe having a community organizer or public defender workshop, so police aren't the only professions that they view in keeping up public safety. Next, we also believe that SJPD should continue and increasing their LGBTQIA plus community relations. Currently, SJPD does have an LGBTQIA plus community liaison, but anti-LGBTQIA plus discrimination persists during police interactions. Some proposed solutions we have for this is training police officers on how to interact with members of the community, and especially working with LGBTQIA plus youth space rather than just Billy to Frank. This training must involve face-to-face discussion with members of the community to provide personal accountability and to make officers humanize who they are working with. Additionally, we believe having a graded assessment and understanding of the community's history, biases, and gender identity implemented during their screening and training process is essential. By employing LGBTQIA plus supportive orgs to create this curriculum and increasing the funding or creation of these friendly spaces, we believe that officers' minds can be changed through education. Akin to the LGBTQIA plus space, we also believe in improving BIPOC relations with SJPD. Most officers actually don't reside in San Jose, is what we youth found, and that there's an overrepresentation of white individuals in the police force, which affects the police force's entire mindset. So we want to have an impacted families roundtable, which emphasizes the voices of those impacted by carceral systems and those affected by police brutality. Next, we want to reallocate officer identities to identity-specific areas, keeping diversity and ethnic clusters in mind. For example, with a large amount of the Asian American and Latino population living in Eastside San Jose, we believe it is best if there are Latino and Asian American officers that patrol these areas because they actually know how their community lives and works. Finally, we want to offer up this graph that the differing racial makeups between the city of San Jose and SJPD is that SJPD does not represent the city of San Jose, and therefore for what we feel is why SJPD holds certain biases towards certain communities because they do not understand them. Next, Jirai will be talking about police force and tactics.
So next we wanted to talk more about what the police force can do with our community. And I also wanted to highlight that this section or our entire presentation is completely separate from the general RIPS board, but a lot of our ideas definitely overlapped. So I'll just highlight a couple of points as we move along.
I'm sorry, I have a point of order. Mayor,
Yes,
at what point are we on this item? Because I don't believe, did my colleagues have these slides in advance? Will these be posted online
No,
as required?
I think staff had asked for these slides. Angel,
The slides are actually in the report.
Okay, so they're saying the same slides. So these slides are part of the overall report. So
Yes.
so will they be posted as part of what's in Granicus so we can follow along that way, or should we be following along in the report?
The youth council slides are actually all part of they're all part of the pages in the final report.
Right, I have my binder in front of me. I'm trying to figure out where we are in the presentation.
We're on page 18, I believe, of the presentation.
Got it. Thank you.
Angel, excuse me, Angel Rios?
Yeah, Mayor, what we'll do is we'll make sure that this gets posted online. For now, I believe the PowerPoint presentation is following the report that is in the there's in the packet. Not so much the PowerPoint, but we will make sure that we'll reach out and work with the RIPS group and get it posted online.
Okay, thank you, Angel. Can I ask the presenters how much time you anticipate needing remaining in the presentation?
We believe around 10 more minutes, if that's all right with you, Mayor.
Two more minutes? Sure.
10 more, if that's all
No,
right.
I think you ought to wrap it up.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, we'll read all the materials and just make sure it's all in the written materials, and we'll make sure it's read.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Jirai, you may proceed.
Yeah, so we'll just wrap this up quickly. If you just want to go through, we just wanted to urge that we wanted more we wanted resources invested in a mental health response. Generally, we want to ensure that the right person is deployed for the right response. We want the right person for the right response. So that's what we're kind of talking about here with mental health response. If you want to go to the next one. And same for the unhoused community. We want a response for those experiencing mental health issues and ensure that those experiencing homelessness are given the resources that they need rather than someone not being able to provide them what they are asking for. And we also, as a group, were concerned about human trafficking as well. And so we wanted just officers to be aware of what is happening with human trafficking and wanted to note that a lot of folks who are experiencing human trafficking may not be able to open up to police officers. So we wanted the right person to respond to that as well. And we also wanted to emphasize that we want to demilitarize and decrease police brutality. So we want to ensure that SGPD has funds allocated for trainings and screenings, and also having first aid kits available. And also decreasing the amount of force that is being used. So instead of going to any chokeholds or anything like that, using de-escalation tactics first. Next slide. And we also wanted to highlight that we also want some improvements on the body camera footage, having wider lenses and allowing the public to have access to body camera footage unedited. And you can also go to the next one. For hiring and recruitment as well, it's similar to what the General Rips Council was saying with mental health screenings and racial bias screenings. And next slide. And also having ethnic studies available or paying for associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees for officers as well. And next slide. Yeah.
Next, we have our other Youth RIPS Council member, Alex, presenting on alternative systems.
I think it'd be good to make this very, very quick. We're at the end of the presentation, so if you could do it in a minute, that'd be great.
I'm just here to really urge the city to take into account what both of the RIPS councils have shown. If we have enough in the police budget to be buying military grade helicopters and body armor and be paying out police misconduct lawsuits, we have the potential to create, you know, the city of San Jose could be a leader in terms of having a revolutionary public safety system in place, to be making sure that people's basic needs are met and that people can reach their full potential. And the recommendations that have been given are a way to do that.
Aside from that, thank you so much, Mayor and Council, for listening to the Youth Council's presentation. And we are open alongside the Adult RIPS Committee to take in any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the members of the Youth Commission, as well as, I'm sorry, not the Youth Commission, forgive me, Youth RIPS, as well as, of course, all the members of the community, both the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee and the Charter Review Commission Public Safety, the commission that made the public safety recommendations. Okay, we now will go to public comment. Tony?
I have Jen Meyer, Tamara Hall, and Elizabeth Agremont. Please come on down, no particular order. Just whoever gets to the microphone first can speak first.
Hi, my name is Jen Meyer. I'm a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice at Sacred Heart, also SEIU Local 521 and a local voter. My Black nephew was frisked by police for the very first time when he was 13. A child on a playground perceived as dangerous by a legal system that is white supremacist by design. In addition to my concern for the safety of us all, it is his safety that is why I strongly support the recommendations outlined here by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee. Those most affected by a problem are the experts with the best solutions. And RIPS was a community-led process grounded in the experiences of those most impacted by our current law enforcement practices which once again are historically and by design, are designed to uphold white supremacy. What would it mean for all of us to be truly safe? It seems to me we should use public resources to address the root causes of harm, and we need ways to call for help that don't result in armed responders. I ask that City Council direct City Administration to work with the community to implement the RIPS recommendations. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tamara Hall. I'm a member of the Racial Equity and Community Safety Committee of Sacred Heart. I also was a representative for that committee on the Reimagining Public Safety Committee. So this community-led process definitely allows us to, as you saw from the Youth Council and also the members, to really hear from the community with all the community listening sessions, do the research, and put forth these recommendations. And all of these outlined, I think, are common sense ideas, and really, we need to let this sink in. Everything in the report, I believe you should have let the youth members, Sam, you should have let them continue with their presentation. It was only a few more minutes. I think we need to think about everything that came to the fruition in 2020 about racial inequities. And our entire city is wanting everyone to take all of these experiences, personal experiences, things we've witnessed, things we've become aware of more recently, specifically in light of all of those system-impacted people as well as people who face police brutality. And the San Jose State Human Rights Council surveyed about 1,500 people, and I helped out and conducted these surveys as well. About 80% of people said that they wanted to see alternatives to policing in the community. We really need to think about how much is at stake. Not just your votes, but really, how much do we really want to put belief into the people who put all the work into this Reimagining Public Safety report, the youth, the members of our community who've been impacted, our Black community, our Latino community. For me, as a Black and Mexican woman, this is what's most important. Thinking about the future, thinking about our most vulnerable populations. So I urge you to really fund, prioritize, and invest in the community over police. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth, and I'm a member of the Race, Equity, and Community Safety Committee at Sacred Heart. I'm in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety and Community Advisory Committee. Recommendations because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our communities safer for all. We remember the commitments we made in 2020 to address racial inequalities and how we keep our communities safe. We have taken the time to develop solutions. The community demands that we act now. The SJSU Human Rights Council People's Budget surveyed around 1,500 San Jose residents and found that across demographic categories, San Jose residents overwhelmingly support adopting alternatives to policing. Between 70 to 82% support for non-police approaches to managing mental health crisis, traffic safety, school safety, and the needs of the city's unhoused population. On behalf of REX, we demand that the City Council direct City Administration to work with the community to further develop and implement the RIPS recommendations. We look forward to hearing your decision on this matter and look forward to working towards a better San Jose where everyone truly feels safe. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the Zoom speakers. I have Kylie Clark first.
Hello, Council. My name is Kylie Clark, and I'm representing West Valley Community Services, a nonprofit that serves the low income and homeless of the West Valley and a proud member of the Real Coalition. We are in strong support of the recommendations outlined in today's report. At WVCS, we work to bring forward those with lived experience, and that is exactly what the RIPS committee did. They heard hours of testimony and used these to inform the recommendations. Please give extra weight to this report, as we know that true expertise lies with those who have experienced these struggles. Every day, we see our unhoused, mentally ill, previously incarcerated, and low-income clients being affected by the way San Jose handles public safety. Nonprofit professionals are better equipped to respond to homelessness and mental health-related calls. People exiting jail should not exit into homelessness. We need to prevent wrongdoing beforehand rather than respond to it with punishment. We urge the Council to direct City Administration to work with community-based partners to further develop and implement the RICS recommendations. Thank you.
Nihar?
Yes. My name is Nihar. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a member of the Race, Equity, and Community Safety Committee at Sacred Heart, or REX for short. I am in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Advisory Committee, or RIPS recommendations, because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our community safer for all. In 2020, we heard City Council make broad promises to enact real change to the scope of power that SJPD has, and now is the time for you to deliver on those promises. We have seen police violence continue despite those promises, and we have not seen root causes actually centered in these conversations. Issues like how homelessness is criminalized, how mental health crises are criminalized, how drug use is criminalized, and how SJPD is far too intertwined in our communities. And trust, our communities are watching. RIPS was a community-led, community-centered process and is now taking time to develop solutions. Community demands that we act now. The San Jose State University Human Rights Council People's Budget surveyed 1,500 San Jose residents and found 77% of people think policing in San Jose has problems, with the majority of residents surveyed agreeing there are serious problems needing major reforms. On behalf of REX, we demand that the City Council direct City Administration to work with the community to further develop and implement the RIPS recommendations. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Catherine?
Good evening. I'm Catherine Hedges, resident of District 3, also a member of SURD, supporting the REX Committee at Sacred Heart Community Service. I'm in strong support of the RIPS recommendations because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our communities safer for all. We need to treat root causes of crime so we can prevent wrongdoing, not punish after it happens. This is important in my community because the current model isn't working. People whose only problem-solving tool is violence, or whose only way of making a living is crime, aren't learning better alternatives during incarceration. And locking them up costs more than supporting them in the community, even if we just paid their rent and other expenses. But we have hope for the next generation. Peer-led youth diversion programs are why there are no young women in juvenile detention. Let's expand efforts like that and also provide adequate rehab for people trapped in substance abuse to help break the cycle of crime and punishment. And as others have mentioned, across demographic categories, San Jose residents overwhelmingly support adopting alternatives to policing, with between 72 and 82% support for non-police approaches to managing mental health crises, traffic safety, school safety, and the needs of the city's unhoused population. On behalf of REX, I demand that the City Council direct City Administration to work with the community to further develop and implement the RIPS recommendations. Thank you very much. I yield my time.
Deborah?
Hi, my name is Deborah Townley, and I'm here representing West Valley Community Services. I live in permanent supportive housing. Some of my neighbors experience acute episodes of psychosis or delusions that are temporary, but can be frightening, violent, and injurious to themselves and others. Forced institutionalization and sedation has become obsolete, and policing and isolation in prison does not make sense for the mentally ill. The opportunity to move forward the evolution of a quality alternative solution for care lies in the consideration of this report. Those with disabling mental illness do not belong in prison or jail. They are among our most vulnerable community members, and they are my neighbors. I encourage the council to please accept this report for consideration as a step forward into a future of nonviolent, program-oriented, and preventive caregiving solutions for the mentally ill, so that their lives may be enhanced by excellence in care rather than extinguished by trauma and isolation. Thank you.
Mercedes?
Hello, my name is Mercedes with Sacred Heart Community Service, and I'm here because I care for my community. I live in and I'm committed to racial justice. I'm also a mother to 2 kids in our local public school districts, and these topics are dear to my heart and how I'm raising my girls. I strongly support the recommendations outlined by this committee. These recommendations not only make sense, but they address real solutions for making our communities safer for all. In the past, we have made commitments to address racial inequities, and this is the perfect example on how to put that commitment to action. The committee took the time to develop real solutions. They heard from us directly and allowed our voices to be heard. In the community survey mentioned already, 77% of people think that policing in San Jose has real problems. They needing major reform. And currently, we only need to see it on the news as well to admit that even our police officers are not exempt from real mental health crises and addictions. So more is needed. This is why residents overwhelmingly support adopting alternatives to policing. We don't need more officers. We need more mental and social health services in our community. Please continue to support these recommendations because they make sense. Thank you.
Rob?
Hello, Mayor and Town Council. My name is Rob Moore, and I'm a proud member of the Real Coalition. I'm a nonprofit manager and an active community member. As a community, we ask our law enforcement professionals to tackle every social challenge, from homelessness to mental health crises to addiction to substance abuse, when there are often others in San Jose who are better equipped to handle these situations. Community partners serving San Jose, like West Valley Community Services and Sacred Heart Community Services, support individuals in all of these categories, and we have seen the positive impact from the responses by nonprofit professionals and other professionals. Please accept the Reimagining Public Safety Report and work with community-based organizations to implement the recommendations of the report. Thank you to our Mayor and Town Council, or Mayor and City Council, for all you do for the City of San Jose.
Crystal?
Hi, I'm Crystal Calhoun. I am the elder leader of the San Jose Unified Equity Coalition, and I'm a part of the REX. And I really ask you guys to really consider and support the RIPS, meaning of how we're going to police, because policing in San Jose, it's unbelievable what's happening here. And then what I want to bring up when they're talking about the funding is that I watch the news, I know, I read, is that San Jose's police budget they have been over budget for 10 years. The officers go unchecked. They can work as much as they want. Nobody's asking them, why are you working all of that overtime? And then I'm a part of the San Jose Unified Equity Coalition, and we're in the San Jose Unified School District, and they're the biggest pro-police district basically in San Jose. They allowed it $220,000 almost to spend it on having cops on campus, which they can't explain to us why. And they spent like 34 on mental health. We need more mental health. We need more social workers. We need more racial justice. And on the unhoused, Mayor, It's unbelievable. I've been living here almost 49 years, and the unhoused here in Silicon Valley, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how sad. I live out in the center of Monterey and all of that. It's unbelievable how sad it is. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like everybody said, rather than locking people up with issues and all that, let's get them some social help. Let's get them some housing, affordable housing. This is Silicon Valley, and you can only rent a shack here for thousands a month. So again, my name is Crystal Calhoun. Please, please consider RIPS. They did a lot of work on this, and it's a really great report. So we really need the help. Thank you.
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks a lot for this item and for the reports from everyone. I guess I should note from the previous item of gun control issues and what the previous speaker just spoke about. It is nice. Well, actually, many people spoke about tonight. It would be nice to how we can develop, the community process at this time. Caring community practices that address mental health, that address crime. Invite crime, people who are committing crime to the process. How do we invite people who are committing crimes to this process so they don't feel they have to commit crime so much and they can participate more in the community process? We've had the events of 9/11, the California wildfires of 2018, the incidents with COVID, where the origins of COVID. Our government is not coming through for us very well. So I think we're headed towards a future that we really have to really address the future of how public community oversight can help the government process. And it helps all of us. I think we're at an important new time to better define the future of a republic in terms of the community democratic process. So we're doing that here. And you made some really important good steps, and thank you immensely for that. In Oakland right now, they're actually working on the future of editing of body camera footages by police and how that can be a more shared process with the community. How do we create a more equal community process between all of the community and its government? And it's not just a process of government dictates anymore. It is a real process of learning democracy. Good luck how we're doing this now. I think we're doing important, good work. I hope we can keep it up. Thank you.
Deborah?
Hi, I'm Deborah St. Julian. I'm a member of Surge at Sacred Heart. And I want to thank the RIPS Committee and the Youth Council for these important, actionable recommendations and for their great presentation. Just listening to them gave me hope. And I agree with Tamara, we should have listened to the youth till the end. I strongly support the recommendations of the RIPS Committee and the Youth Council. This report is hopeful and thoughtful, and obviously the result of tons of work and tons of input from across the community, and especially folks most affected. These recommendations amplify public health and community safety and harm reduction actions for all citizens. Personally, this is important to me because I have called San Jose home for 37 years. And like Crystal, I'm concerned about what I've seen in the last decade. I grieve for my homeless sibs. I grieve for my neighbors who suffer from racial bias and inequity. I grieve for people who have lost family members to the San Jose PD. So much sadness. But like Alex said, San Jose could be an example of innovative public safety. I look forward to the city, council, and the mayor robustly embracing these recommendations as you continue to work with us, the community, to further implement and develop these harm reducing, public safety enhancing recommendations. Thank you.
Brad?
Incredible offer. He has offered. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you. My name is Brad Imamura. I'm a taxpayer and property owner in the city of San Jose. I am a member of the hundreds of thousands of taxpayers here in San Jose that actually fund the city and fund everything that goes into it, police and fire, and all the personnel that take care of us in Public Works Department, Parks and Recreation, the library, et cetera. I kind of came in the middle of the presentation, but I can appreciate the work that the Youth Council had done. But I think what needs to be done, and as far as my opinion is that they need to have a little bit more life experience, get a job, pay taxes, understand how the system works. The things that I've heard, and I'm sure you and the city council have heard ad nauseum regarding these recommendations. You know, you have to deal with the reality of the bargaining group. In this case, it would be the POA, and they're a force to be reckoned with, as you know. So a lot of these things are a lot of, to me, and no disrespect, but it sounds like fantasy. A lot of these things that, you know, we say that, well, we don't want certain things to happen again, so we're trying to prevent these things, but a lot of these things shouldn't have happened in the first place. First of all, we need to deal with, before we hire more police officers, we need to deal with what we currently have now. In the past couple of weeks, we've had a fentanyl case, we've had working while intoxicated, and most recently we had a police officer pleasure himself while on duty. Please work with that first. Thank you.
Wesley?
Hi, my name is Wesley. So first thing I want to say is that everyone is paying taxes if they're over the age of 18. So I don't want that to be like a special thing that like only one person in the whole city is paying taxes and supporting everyone. I also want to thank the youth for coming out, for doing this work, for being able to step up and take the time to really present. And I do specifically want to thank the Filipino lead for the presentation, even though it was cut short. I work with the African American Community Service Agency, and I support the community-led initiatives to protect our neighborhoods, our communities, need mental health services, homelessness outreach, and addiction services, and support in partnership with the city and local organizations. So I just want to say that I do understand, I partially do agree with Brad, the things that are happening should not be happening. We had someone shot by police after they had de-escalated an incident with an armed person, and then they got almost murdered by the police themselves. So I do think we need to take some accountability and really look at what is happening in our systems, because they are not serving us. They haven't been serving us for decades. They've been out of order. I just think that at this point, there is the access to social media, cameras are everywhere, and we are able to really witness it. Thank you for my time. I yield.
Christine?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Silicon Valley Independent Living Center is very much in support of this report. We signed on to the letter showing our support, and certainly looking at the inequities that are around us. We need to look at the human being, the human factor. Who is standing in front of you? Who is sitting in front of you? We need to recognize that disability crosses all strata of ability and disability, age, gender, race, and ethnicity. To not do this is to not honor the individual as they stand in front of you. Also, looking at the future, perhaps an Office of Disability Affairs can assist in this regard. Thank you so much, and I yield my time.
Conda?
Good evening, Mayor Liccardo and members of the City Council. I'm Richard Conda, Executive Director of Asian Law Alliance and a member of the Real Coalition. I strongly and emphatically support the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee, RIPS, because these recommendations are very insightful and provide real solutions for making our community safer. Law enforcement is asked to confront every social challenge we face, like homelessness, mental illness, addiction, domestic violence. Wouldn't it be better to match the right professional to the situation so that people in crisis get the help that they deserve? This is important to Asian Law Alliance because we have seen too many cases when community members with mental health issues end up dead when police are called to respond to a 911 call. We urge the council to direct the city administration to work with community-based partners to further develop and implement the RIPS recommendations. Thank you very much. I yield the rest of my time.
SVCN.
Hi, I'm Kira Kazantzis, CEO at Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits, an alliance of community-based organizations working to support thriving and equitable communities in Santa Clara County. And I think apparently it's important to mention that I am a San Jose resident and a homeowner. In alignment with our prevention and intervention priority area, SVCN stands in strong support of the recommendations advanced in the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee's April 2022 report. In addition to the recommendations in the report, we urge that the City of San Jose increase its investment in prevention and intervention programming. Mayor Liccardo recently spoke to the need to increase prevention and intervention efforts at a recent rules meeting. We agree. We recommend that something like doubling or tripling the city's investment in best services in fiscal year 2023 budget would be a great start. And we'd urge the City Council to accept the report, add resources to the budget to implement the highest priority recommendations, and make a longer-term plan to implement the rest. Thank you.
Madison.
Hi, my name is Madison. I'm a member of REX at Sacred Heart, and I strongly support the recommendations. 4 years ago, I was charged by police for drug possession. Despite this charge, I continued to be involved with the system. I didn't have a job, and I cycled between hospitals and even homelessness at one point. In 2020, in a town outside California, I got tied up with a police officer that could have charged me with possession resulting in felony. Instead, he saw that I was clearly sick and spent over 2 hours helping me get into a rehab. Since the day I left rehab, I continue to stay clean and am now 100% self-sufficient, have a full-time job, and go to UCLA. But most significantly, I have never had any more interactions with the police since getting my help for addiction. Being criminally charged for drug possession did not help me stop my addiction and the crimes that went along with it. And that's the case with most addicts in the system. It wasn't until the officer got me connected to the right professional where all my root issues were treated and I was able to change the course of my life. For this reason, I'm in strong support of the recommendations, which seek solutions to homelessness and addiction instead of criminalizing and further perpetuating it. We need to start treating the root causes of crime so we can prevent wrongdoing and not punish it. Thank you.
Erin.
Good evening. My name is Erin Stanton. I work at Sacred Heart Community Service, and I am here tonight because of my commitment to racial justice. I am in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee. They have put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our communities safer for all. This community-led process centered the voices of people impacted by current public safety practices and surfaced key issues for reform. We need to treat root causes of crime so that we can invest in making our community better and prevent wrongdoing, not punish it after it happens. This is important to me because I care about the well-being and the safety of my community. It's time to take action to make our community safer for all of us and all of our neighbors. Thank you to the committee and the youth committee for the countless hours they put into considering and developing these recommendations. We need open minds, creativity, and new ideas because the status quo isn't working. Thank you.
Jennifer.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Alva Lewis. I'm a San Jose resident and member of the San Jose Unified Equity Coalition. I'm in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Committee. As mentioned earlier in the comments, the San Jose State University Human Rights Council People's Budget surveyed 1,500 San Jose residents and found they overwhelmingly support adopting alternatives to policing, with between 72 to 82% of residents supporting non-police approaches to managing mental health crises, traffic safety, and the needs of our unhoused neighbors. Police are not trained to be social workers or crisis counselors. An armed police officer responding to someone in crisis can be very triggering, escalating situations rapidly and far too often with deadly results. We've seen this in San Jose with the police officers ending the life of Anthony Nunez. Police are trained to respond to situations with force first, meaning their primary go-to is to force compliance. However, someone in crisis may not have the awareness or ability to comply, leading to unnecessary and disastrous consequences. Please fund programs that utilize the right expert for the right job by implementing the RIPS recommendations. Thank you.
Ihioma.
Thank you. My name is Ihoma Umez Ernini. I serve as Director of Compassion and Justice Ministries at the River Church Community, and I'm also a member of the Pact Beloved Community Team. And in these various capacities, I was able to serve as part of the RIPS committee. I want to underscore that I am a person of faith. I believe that every person is made in the image of a creator God that loves them, and that every person, regardless of their faith, their creed, is worthy of dignity, honor, love, and respect. I wonder if you believe that. And the question is, does SJPD believe this? Does SJPD practice this? The testimony that I've heard from community members, the various reports from the listening sessions, not just in the 8 months of the Reimagining Public Safety Committee, but even the years prior, is that SJPD does not. Our committees, our communities are calling for SJPD to serve and protect the residents of San Jose and uphold the sacred image that each of us bear. Our communities have been calling for an end to racism and sexism, misogyny, xenophobia, police brutality, homophobia, Islamophobia, transphobia. All of these are maybe just skimming the scandals plaguing our city. The Reimagining Public Safety Committee's work has been comprehensive, and it's not just reforms for SJPD, but it's alternatives to police, crime prevention, accountability, and transparency. And they've helped to identify the correct professionals for each situation, which is a holistic picture of public safety. So I urge the City Council to move with all possible haste to adopt and implement these recommendations. Thank you so much.
Philip.
Hello, my name is Philip with Sacred Heart Community Service, and I'm here because of my commitment to racial justice. Policing in our community needs to change. RIPS is community led by those most impacted by the current law enforcement practices here in San Jose. Through our collective experiences and voices, RIPS believes in common sense. It's time for the right experts for the right situations regarding people experiencing houselessness, drug use issues, and mental health incidents. And there needs to be a focus on prevention, not punishment, to build a stronger, safer, and more productive San Jose. Police should handle serious criminal issues, but we need to invest in addressing the conditions that make our communities less safe in the first place. Last month, The Guardian reported that US police has killed nearly 600 people in traffic stops since 2017. How many of those happened here? How many more can we protect? A 2015 report by the Treatment Advocacy Center found that 1 in 4 people killed by police have severe mental illness. How many of those happen here? How many can we protect? Mobile response units from community-based organizations, rather than law enforcement, can respond to incidents involving individuals experiencing a mental health crisis or provide assistance for people experiencing houselessness. Traffic and parking enforcement personnel and responsibilities can be managed by the Department of Transportation's Traffic Safety Division. These proposals are sorely needed to increase public safety and increase the public's trust in our police. The status quo of policing must be imagined for the sake of public safety by the will of the people. Thank you.
Molly.
My name is Molly McLeod, and I'm a San Jose resident. And I'm thinking about how many times I've reflected on and spoke up about policing violence and practices and complaint processes and change. My earliest encounters with the police was with my uncle, retired sergeant from the San Jose Police Department, and my mother said to his brother, you know, I can't continue to have my children around you as you spew these racist sentiments at holidays and encounters. I love you, brother. I'll stay with you, but I can't expose you to that. Well, I grew up in this activist family, and little did I know that ultimately I'd become a mother of Black sons, both of whom had negative experiences with the San Jose Police Department, and that I filed complaints, and I've, longed for the day of more accountability for policing systems. In fact, when Trump was inaugurated and there was the march, there was also at the Mexican Heritage Plaza work on oversight. So I'm glad that the community engagement and involvement that I've been involved in since I was a kid, and I'm now getting up there in age. I'm hopeful that the young voices will be listened to, that the old voices will be listened to, that the voices of those who are most impacted are listened to, and that this will all end up meaning something. I haven't participated in some of these conversations because it just hurts too much.
Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather Cleary, CEO of Peninsula Family Service. We offer employment and financial empowerment services to the city of San Jose, and I'm a member of the Racial Equity Action Leadership Coalition. I am in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Advisory Committee because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our communities safer for all. We need police to respond to serious criminal matters, but they should be trained, supported, and held to a high standard of accountability. Many of our nonprofit staff at PFS have directly experienced unnecessary traumatic incidents related to the San Jose Police Department. This impacts Peninsula Family Service and my staff's ability to do their job and serve this community. This community-led process and these recommendations will make everyone in the city safer. This is your community speaking to you. This is your youth speaking to you. Please listen. This presentation was terrific, and these recommendations are thoughtful and community-based. I urge the council and city administration to listen and to work with the community-based partners to fully develop, fund, and implement the RIPS recommendations. Thank you.
John?
Hi, my name is Father John Pettigo. I'm with Catholic Charities. I'm a member of the Racial Equity Action Leadership Coalition that works to advance racial justice and equity in our community. I'm in strong support of the recommendations outlined by Reimagining Public Safety Committee Advisory Committee, RIPS, because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our community safer for all. My Catholic Charities team is concerned that law enforcement, as it stands now, is compelled to tackle every social challenge that we face. As you've heard what it was, all the different kinds of things that are going on. We believe that police resources should be redirected to agencies and other mental health and community support professionals who are specifically trained to address people in crisis, stabilize them, and help navigate them to get the help that they need. So they use a healing and therapeutic frame for support. Secondly, rather than using the blunt instrument of incarceration, we need to address root causes of crime so that we can prevent wrongdoing, not punish what comes after. This is important to the community work and the neighborhoods that we serve because locking people up is an expensive proposition that is a public safety failure. Address the issues that lead to crime. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you all. I yield my time.
Carmen?
Hi, my name is Carmen Brammer. I'm with the Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet. I'm also a member of the Racial Equity Action Leadership Coalition, REAL. And REAL is working to advance racial justice and equity in our community. I'm also a longtime resident of San Jose. I strongly support the recommendations outlined by the RIPS committee because they put forward a thoughtful report with sound solutions that encompasses safety for every San Jose resident. What we have been and continue to do is not working. We need to treat root causes of crime to prevent wrongdoing, not punishment after it happens, which is shown to disproportionately harm and impact the African ancestry community. I urge the council to direct city administration to work with community-based partners to further develop and implement the RIPS recommendations. Thank you.
Evelyn?
Hi, good evening. I'm Evelyn Cervantes. I'm a public school teacher, a voter in District 1, a homeowner as well. I invite you to follow the recommendations of the advisory committee. I'm really proud of our council and our mayor. Thank you for leaning on the community through the advisory committee and for making the council meetings hybrid. This is one way, of course, of dismantling white supremacy when we invite more folks onto the table in this manner. And so with those folks and our voices, we are saying that we want alternatives to policing. I understand the cynicism since there has been no real data on alternatives. Policing is all that we have known, and it's just not working for everyone. It takes bold action by leaders such as yourselves to create real change. With 2 young babies, I would feel more safe knowing my community, my neighbors, and myself will be offered the help we may need in times of crisis. We have all heard and read what the mental health crisis that we are under that has only been made worse by the pandemic. So again, I invite you to please follow the recommendations given by the advisory committee and our youth in making San Jose safer for everyone. Thank you so much. I yield my time.
Liz?
Hi, everyone. My name is Liz. I live in District 3, and I am I'm founding member of the Race Equity Community Safety Committee. And I am also going to strongly urge council to follow the recommendations from the RIPS committee. As a member of REX, I was out in the streets talking to community members while collecting survey responses about community safety. There was a lot of people who didn't know a lot of things, and just talking with them about the way that we pay police and the way that we fund our different programs, there was a lot of discontent among our community members. So these recommendations are coming from the community, and they will only prove to be beneficial over time. We are spending far too much money on law enforcement and incarceration and not nearly enough on community care programs. And I haven't forgotten the commitments to racial equity that the city of San Jose made in 2020. So I'm gonna urge you to listen to our community, to take these recommendations and your responsibility to your constituents seriously. I yield my time.
Chris?
Hello, I'm a community member from District 2, taxpayer, voter, and about to close on my first home, so I hope to be here a while. I implore our city leadership here and implement the recommendation made by RIP's report and the advisory committees, and to be a part of the change and not to be the regime that is eroded by it. San Jose PD is not the right department to handle the needs of the people of San Jose. I want to break down a couple of statistics as reported to the FBI in the 2020 Crime Data Explorer data point. The highest cause of crime is drug offenses. The second is all other drug offenses at 3,461. The FBI says that these are violations of state and local laws that do not include offenses against property, people, gambling, drugs, weapons, vice crimes, fraud, arson, serious crimes like rape, homicide, or traffic stops. So what are they? What are these arrests made with no transparency or oversight if it's not a way for PD to terrorize the community? Are these those suffering with mental illnesses, as they are not included in the data points sent to the FBI? The second highest offense. The fourth is drug possession at 3,128. We are seeing a trend. Our police force is not the right personnel for majority of our crimes. You've heard many great proposals by the advisory committee. You've heard the community. You've heard the facts. I urge you to be a part of the change and to act on it. Thank you so much. I yield my time.
Mia?
Hello, my name is Mia Veal, and I am the Policy and Advocacy Coordinator for the African American Community Service Agency. I support the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee, and I hope that all the recommendations can be moved forward. Our communities need expansion of services that protect and better our neighborhoods, such as mental health services, houselessness, and harm reduction. We also must have accountability for unsafe policing practices to make sure trauma is not continued in our most marginalized groups, particularly to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Thank you. I yield my time.
Lisa?
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lisa Mena, and I am a mental health rehabilitation specialist. I'm also a youth mental health first aid instructor and a member in the Santa Clara County. I've also worked within the county the last 15 years between some primary mental health agencies and contracting with the Santa Clara County Probation Department. And I provide victim awareness workshops to youth offenders. So I truly believe that in order for us to be able to make impact and change in our communities is through listening to our community voices and bringing community members who have these, one, lived experiences, two, professional experiences, working directly with our youth population, directly working with our population. So I highly support all the work and all of the efforts that our community came together to create this reimagining public safety for our communities. And I yield my time. Thank you.
Chad?
Good evening, Mayor Liccardo and Council. Thank you so much for receiving and hopefully approving the receipt of this report. I'm Chad Bojorquez with Destination Home, and I was on the RIPS Council to kind of be a liaison to the unhoused. We were able to facilitate multiple listening sessions and testimonies from unhoused and formerly unhoused individuals. We were very powerful. I would say one theme that I want to make sure to share is that by and large, folks who are outdoors want the police to be there for their public safety, just like anyone else in our community. But at this time, it feels very adversarial and criminalized to be homeless. So I do want to point particular attention to the three proposals that folks with lived experience contributed to. One is around an alternative to policing for mental health and addiction crises that are on our streets. This is a model that's been successful in other communities, and it was a really great, the proposal was a really great partnership with several of the RIPS committee members. Also, ending the criminalization of homelessness. There are many circumstances in San Jose where it is frankly illegal just to be outside and homeless, and that contributes to a vicious cycle that just makes it harder to house folks later on from a system perspective. And finally, preventing exits to homelessness, meaning if we already have an individual in the criminal justice system, let's do everything we can collectively to make sure that we don't exit people back into homelessness. Anyway, as always, Destination Home and the Lived Experience Advisory Board are here to help support the implementation of these recommendations. Thank you.
Sean?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sean Girth. I'm the Executive Director of Educare California at Silicon Valley and a member of the REAL Coalition. I'm here to speak tonight in support of the recommendations made by RIPS. We are an organization that serves children birth through 5, and we realize that our work to strengthen children means that we're strengthening families and strengthening community. We are here in solidarity to say that we are willing and able and excited to continue to do our part to convene our community, to provide family strengthening services, to provide mental health services, to provide food, diapers, social services, caseworkers. We know that as a nonprofit, we can bring our assets to the table to strengthen the community. So we urge you to support the recommendations in the RIPS report so that we can create a stronger community because strong communities lead to strong families and children. And the better experiences that children have means that we will need less policing and less services down the road. Thank you.
Roberto? Roberto Gill? Okay, we're going to move on to Elisa.
Good evening. My name is Elisa Koff-Ginsburg with the Behavioral Health Contractors Association, an association of the over 30 nonprofits that provide mental health, substance use, and supportive housing services as part of our county's safety net. I'm also a member of the Racial Equity Action Leadership Coalition. I'm in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee RIPS recommendations because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our communities safer. This community-led process centered the voices of people impacted by current public safety practices, and there was specific outreach to those living with mental illness and addiction to solicit their input. We ask law enforcement to tackle every social challenge we face. Many are not criminal in nature, but are rooted in issues such as mental health, substance use, homelessness, truancy, or family conflict. In cases where the person in crisis may fear or not trust police, the situation may escalate upon seeing an officer, causing additional trauma. When crisis counselors respond to an individual in crisis, that person is more likely to accept help and the crisis de-escalates, and often the crisis counselor is able to follow up. We need to match the right professional to the situation so that people in crisis get the help they need. On behalf of BHCA members, we urge you to direct city administration to work with community-based partners to further develop and implement the recommendations, and we are ready to be part of that process. Thank you for the opportunity to.
Raven?
Hi, my name is Raven Malone. I just want to say first, I found it pretty rude to interrupt and rush this presentation. The Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee worked really hard on this, and they do deserve your time and respect. I also want to echo what everyone before me said, except for the guy who told the members of the advisory committee to get a job. Also, we need so much more than just cleaning up the department. I think that working directly with the communities that have been directly affected is how you make good change. This is the change that Black and Brown people have been asking for generations, and not school name changes. I really hope that the City Council directs city administration to work with the community to further develop, fund, and implement the RIPS recommendation. I yield my time. Thanks.
Rhea?
Hi, my name is Rhea Kapoor. I'm a San Jose resident as well as a staff member of Sacred Heart Community Service. I'm here because of my commitment to racial justice. I am in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the RIPS committee, because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our communities safer for all. This process was by community, for community, and centered the voices of people impacted by current public safety practices and systems that surface key issues and opportunities for reform. We expect law enforcement to tackle every social challenge we face, like homelessness, addiction, domestic abuse, and mental health, when in reality, we need to match the right professional to the situation so that people in crisis get the help that they need and deserve. As a disabled resident of San Jose, I had interactions with SJPD as a mentally ill child where I struggled with suicidal ideation, and SJPD used excessive force and put me in handcuffs. And I'm thinking about all the other children out there and adults who are mentally ill and who are struggling with drug addiction, who need real help and instead are being brutalized by police. I urge the city to listen to the Reimagining Public Safety Committee and put forth these recommendations and put them in practice as soon as possible. Thank you.
Eduardo.
Hello, my name is Eduardo Valladares. Good evening. I'm a teacher in San Jose for 14 years and born and raised in San Jose. 43, parent of 3, homeowner, a lot of things, a lot of roots here in San Jose. Also part of the San Jose Unified Equity Coalition. I just want to thank the City Council for hearing this insightful data and transformative plan. I'm on all support for the reimagine for the RIPS plan. Living in downtown San Jose, I've lived all my life here in downtown San Jose, and it's a highly policed area. And I think we're asking too much from police officers. I think I really feel that way. I feel it does not make me feel any safer. I feel if we had folks, again, the professionals that could really help and support the folks that are in need, I think we would open some things up. I think San Jose and the Silicon Valley has made a number of dreams happen for so many people. And I think what we're asking here is to open up that dream to so many of the people that do deserve a chance and deserve even second chances, because we know that they're going to be vital to our community, and they are our community members, and we want them here, and we want them to do well here. As a teacher, I see, as a person who's lived here all my life, I've known, people that, I've gone to high school with, or my family members that, become houseless. And I wonder, what are the services that could have been provided? And I don't want to demonize anyone. I just want to make sure that our communities are served best. And this plan is really, helpful to create a transformative San Jose for all of us, so we could all thrive and become a better city. Thank you.
No more CZU.
In support of what may be adopted, what so many people here have come to suggest today. This it'd be to the benefit of San Jose and surrounding cities if San Jose developed a commission of civilian responders. CERT, civilian emergency responders, that's available at ready.gov. A lot of people, we have training, we're volunteers, we have certifications, we have education. We will work for you for free, like we did during the fires. Much in the same way that anyone donating food is covered by the Food Donation Act of 2017. We as volunteers are covered by the Good Samaritan laws. Everybody on this call is someone who will work for your city for free when there's a problem. They're already doing it. So a hands-on commission to help organize and deploy services and supplies to meet needs, and with also with an eye on the environment. Everything gets worse during a mass casualty event, a natural disaster, a fire. And right now, what the council doesn't seem to realize is that the CZU fire chiefs and directors are about to lose access into some of the open spaces and redwood forests. Thanks.
Lydia.
Good evening. My name is Lidia Bustamante, and I'm an Associate Director over at Sacred Heart Community Service, and we're an organization that's been serving your city since 1964. I'm here representing a base of about 45,000 individual people, more than 3/4 of which live in your city. At Sacred Heart, our commitment is to addressing both the symptoms and the root cause of poverty. So I was actually really pleased to review how comprehensive the community-based RIPS report proved to be. Look, I recognize the delicate balance that you constantly teeter on as public officials between those who want to burn the whole system down and those who want a seat at the table to negotiate tangible improvements in the lives of all people who live and work here. But the recommendations that you're hearing tonight are what you've been waiting for. What you needed was the political cover from a diverse collaborative network of your constituents so that you can do the right thing. And this right here is it. The RIPS report explores over 40 proposals that can be more effective, efficient, and equitable strategies to make our community safer, rather than relying on SJPD to serve all of those functions for everyone all the time. And what's more, our REX committee of those with lived experience on these issues actually see a really clear path forward on many of these proposals in the fall. Now, you and I both know that around campaign season, each of you guys come knocking on our neighborhood doors to remind our people that the only way to make sure that these kinds of community-driven proposals are taken seriously is if our elected officials hear directly from us. Well, here you go. These 40 proposals are smart, thoughtful, and actually doable. And I want to urge you to act on these recommendations because we need to invest in addressing the conditions that make our communities less safe in the first place. Incorporate these into your budget recommendations this season, and let's make some real plans to move forward.
Jamal?
Yeah, what's good, everybody? Jamal Williams. I co-chair the Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet. I'm part of REAL. I live in San Jose. I work at San Jose State. I'm committed to the city. And I was on the RIPS committee. We put in a ton of work. We worked really hard. Props to the Youth Council. And said we're actually really thoughtful and innovative. I think that, you know, we pride ourselves in San Jose on being a city of innovation. So let's get innovative around these solutions to public safety. You know, we can be innovative around all the technology that we can conceive, but seem to struggle figuring out ways to be innovative around taking care of our residents and providing real safety. I was sitting here months ago with all of you all on the city council advocating for this process. We talked, y'all voted for it. And so this is what we came up with after months of work. I live down the street. Every day I drive down the street, I see the road says Black Lives Matter. I see the signs that say Black Lives Matter downtown. We haven't done anything since 2020 around police reform and change and community safety, except for start this committee. So if these messages that I'm seeing where our lives and our community matters, our voices matter, then the voice of these recommendations need to matter tonight. So you all asked for us to form this committee. We formed it. We put in months of work, multiple recommendations. Please accept them. Thank you.
Omar?
Hello, my name is Omar Leal. I am a resident of District 7 and I work with Sacred Heart Community Service. And I'm speaking today because I believe in the work of advancing racial justice and equity in our community. I'm in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Committee because RIPS put forward this thoughtful report with real solutions for making our community safe. This community-led process has been commended by a lot of folks here today, and I think it can't be stressed enough. They centered the voices of people impacted by current public safety practices and surfaced these key issues and opportunities to reform them. They need to be taken seriously. They need to be really seen as like the gift and blueprint for justice and equity in our city. And I would like to just close by echoing the sentiments of the Youth Council presentation before it was cut short and in that rushed section, that this is an opportunity for San Jose to lead and what it means to reimagine public safety here. So I urge the council to direct city administration to work with these community-based partners to further develop and implement the RIPS recommendations. That is all.
Sujatha.
Thank you so much. My name is Sujatha Venkatraman. I'm a staff of West Valley Community Services, a safety net organization serving San Jose, and a proud member of SVCN and Real Coalition. I'm here today as a resident of San Jose, a homeowner living in District 9 for 11 years, an immigrant, a person of color, mother for 2 boys who go to San Jose schools. I strongly support the recommendation outlined in the Reimagining Public Safety Report because these policies and solutions will create a community in which everyone is safe, including our unhoused residents and those who struggle with mental health and person of color. The recommendation focuses on prevention, safety, and accountability. I strongly believe that these changes need to be done now so that my kids and kids in my neighborhood can live and thrive in San Jose. Thank you very much.
Adriana.
Hello. My name is Adriana Chavez Lopez, and I'm a member of San Jose Strong. I'm in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee, RIPS. I appreciate the recommendations because RIPS has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our communities safer. This is a community-led process that centered the voices of people impacted by current public safety practices. Thank you to all the committee and youth committee especially for all their work. We need to treat root causes of crime so that we can prevent wrongdoing, not punish it after it happens. We need programs that help people go to school, get a job, and get housing. We need to provide more mental health crisis support, more counseling for families and children, and better rehabilitation services. We do not need to make more jails. The need for counseling is overwhelming, and people suffering from mental illness should be removed from our prisons and be supported by the mental health system. We need therapeutic communities that provide people and families with resources and support. Please end the criminalization of homelessness. We need crisis councils and social workers. That's what we should be investing in. We remember the commitments we made in 2020 to address racial inequities and how we keep our communities safe. We have taken the time to develop the solutions, and the community demands that we act now. Thank you and have a good night.
William.
Hi, my name is William Armeline. I'm the director of the San Jose State University Human Rights Institute and the criminal justice chair for NAACP of San Jose and Silicon Valley. And I'm also a San Jose resident for over 15 years. I also would like to thank the RIPS committee and the Youth Council for their very hard work on these recommendations and all the background work they had to do to come to those conclusions. I had the opportunity to witness some of that as an advisory member to the RIPS committee, and I do want to speak to the just level of sheer effort that was put in by so many of the organizers and so many of the members on both of those groups. And I would also like to thank City Council for your serious consideration of the RIPS recommendations. As you know, our institute worked with Sacred Heart, Rex, and the Real Group to conduct the People's Budget of San Jose research project that helped to inform the recommendations considered today. I simply wanted to emphasize some of our research, our critical findings, and voice our support for the RIPS recommendations. As others have mentioned, in agreement with data collected in our focus groups, the citywide survey showed that across demographic categories, respondents overwhelmingly support San Jose adopting alternatives to policing, with between 72 and 82% supporting non-police approaches to managing mental health crises, traffic safety, school safety, and the needs of the city's unhoused population. Indeed, residents showed overwhelming support for things like a mental health crisis team, and that was at like nearly 85%. Resources for the unhoused at well over 70%, and resources for public schools also at over 70%. We urge that you take the findings of our research and the RIPS recommendations seriously and take the necessary steps to fund and realize their implementation. I thank you again and yield the rest of my time.
Brian.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Boy, folks are very, very articulate. And thank you to that committee for really, really doing a very deep, thorough job. Thank you to Mr. Mayor for, sorry, Mr. Liccardo. Thank you, Mayor Liccardo, and everybody. I just want to bring up one point. A very, very flawed human being who I believe was probably one of the best presidents we ever had, who lost his life at a very young age and also saved his men, swimming several miles and giving a message on a coconut after trying to sink a destroyer with a PT boat. He said we could make it in the moon. We could make it to the moon in 10 years. I think we can do this too. I yield my time. Thank you.
Shiloh?
Hello, my name is Shiloh Ballard, and I'm here on behalf of the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition and as a member of the Real Coalition. We want to second what you've heard here tonight, and in particular, I wanted to underscore what you heard from Molly McLeod say about her hope that this actually results in something meaningful. And I say that as a way of highlighting what is needed to pave the way for real solutions and to highlight one piece of that that is particularly important to me, and to ask you what comes next after you hopefully, I think, bless this set of recommendations, because it is definitely an uphill battle given that we are really legitimately reimagining, and that is really, really hard. So one of the things I wanted to ask or just say that is most important that's needed from you all as the people who are elected to be liaisons to the community, so that we can get our brains ready to reimagine, rests in how we actually talk about these issues. And so I just wanted to highlight the wrong way to talk about this issue is kind of what you all do. You use fear, you play off our emotions, you scare us, you use hype and propaganda to advance a fear-based agenda that does not position us to implement real solutions. And I'm not saying that crime does not exist and that there's nothing to be afraid of, but the way you all talk about crime does not match the data and statistics. I mean, if I listened to you all and PD, I'd never leave my home because I'd be too scared to do so. So please stop doing that. It's gross and it's manipulative. Let's talk about these issues in a way that sets us up for real solutions that involve real reimagining. And as Molly said, solutions that are actually meaningful. Thank you so much.
Kathy?
Hello, council members and Mayor Liccardo. My name is Kathy Cordova. I'm the Executive Director of Recovery Cafe San Jose. I am here to urge you to accept the recommendations put forward in the RIPS report. As your next door neighbor at Recovery Cafe, we are a healing community for those who have experienced trauma, including the traumas of being unhoused, mental health challenges, substance abuse, family violence, racialized trauma, and especially the re-traumatization of interactions with the criminal justice system. The process that the RIPS committee used was community-centered. As a member of the Real Coalition, I've closely followed the development of the RIPS report. We ask that you consider non-police responses to social challenges like homelessness, mental illness, addiction, and family violence. My staff and I need real alternatives to calling 911 when a crisis occurs. The report is thorough. Please make our city safer by accepting it. We need our police officers to be trained, supported, and held to a high standard of accountability. Thank you for listening. I yield my time.
Louise?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Louise Auerhahn with Working Partnerships, also a 20-year resident of San Jose, the last 15 years in downtown Sun. And first, I want to give an enormous thank you to the RIPS committee members for all the work, the time, and the thoughtfulness that they have put into this report and this process. Back in summer of 2020, and a long time before that, a lot of us made a lot of commitments to racial justice, and in particular to address the racialized impacts of policing and prisons. Now it's time to make good on those commitments. A lot of speakers have made a lot of important points. I want to echo one in particular, that we need to find ways to stop criminalizing homelessness and poverty. It doesn't help, it doesn't work. Being arrested and incarcerated just pushes people even deeper into poverty. Once you get out, you often can't get a driver's license, you can't find a home, you can't get a job. I work with folks like that every day, and they're stuck because of that one experience of incarceration. So we need to find ways to break this cycle by addressing the root causes of poverty and homelessness and not pushing those onto law enforcement and expecting that we can deal with the problem by locking it up. Thank you for this effort, and now let's keep going.
Reverend Ray.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Reverend Ray. I am the Executive Director for PAC, which is People Acting in Community Together. I am a member of the Real Coalition. 32-year resident of San Jose, living in District 3. I won't highlight the talking points which you've heard, which are clear and that have been researched thoroughly. They're great ideas and they're great recommendations. We know that there is no easy way to make change, but there are principles that we abide by, which says that those who are closest to the pain are closest to the solution. And those who are closest to the pain are simply crying out, asking those who have the power, which is you, and if I might add, that the decision that you make will outlive your tenure. So it has, if I could, from a faith perspective, eternal implications. So this is more than just a decision based on one's self-interest and or political ploy. This is a moral, ethical decision that creates a community that has the opportunity to really become a community of belonging. San Jose is the 10th largest city in the nation, Santa Clara, the 3rd largest economy. This is an opportunity for you to stand inside your self-interest of creating a community of belonging where public safety truly meets the needs of the people. So we ask that you stand in a moral position, a place of courage, making difficult decisions that create real change for a community that is in need. Blessings in Ashe.
Christopher.
My name is Chris Logan with Sacred Heart Community Service. I'm a member of the Race Equity Action Leadership Coalition that works to advance racial justice and equity in our community. First, I want to say to Mayor Liccardo, really wasn't a good look to cut off the youth presentation. Really urge you to do better in your facilitation of these meetings, even if they tend to be going long, because this is a really important process. But I had the great honor and privilege of supporting the community members throughout the Reimagining Public Safety process. I'm in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee. The reason I'm invested in this process because I've had 2 interactions with police that give me concern about them being the main resource for public safety. The first is when I was pulled over by a police officer and they told me not to make any sudden movements and to wait while he checks to make sure I was not a serial killer. I know that if I hadn't been prepared as a preteen by my Black mother and Black grandfather, I would have reacted to these words and may not be alive today to tell the story. The second was during my own mental health crisis when I was made to wait several hours for anyone to respond and give me the care that I so desperately needed. We asked law enforcement to tackle every social challenge we face, like homelessness and mental health, addiction, and domestic abuse. When it comes to it's better just to match the right professional to these crises. I envision a city where someone experiencing a mental health crisis can get the help they need from trained professionals within minutes and not hours. On behalf of Sacred Heart, we urge the council to direct city administration to work with community-based partners to further develop and implement the RIPS recommendations. Thank you.
Roberto.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Roberto Gil. I'm from Sacred Heart Community Service, member of REAL, and I'm here in support of the RIPS recommendation. I also want to thank the RIPS committee and the Youth Council for all the hard work that they put into it, make this a community-led process. I've been living in San Jose for over 20 years. I'm a resident of District 9. My daughter is a student in San Jose, being raised here in San Jose. And, you know, I want her to grow up in a community that as a young Latina, as a brown woman, that she doesn't have to worry about her community not being safe or being targeted by how she looks, right? Because that has been, you know, as other people have shared, that has been my personal experiences growing up as a brown person in this country, son of immigrants. And I've also worked with youth and families for many years. And I've had the privilege of being around youth now that are young adults. And though there are many successful stories and that I'm very proud of, you know, I have a lot of joy in what these youth have been able to do as adults. I also have stories of hardship, where one particular case, there's a youth that suffers from mental illness. He's a young adult, and I know he struggled with incarceration too. And that pains me to know that we live in a system that, in a city where we can't help him. We can't find other solutions. So please take these recommendations serious. We have a chance to do something different and be innovative, just like the Youth Council said. Thank you.
Tina?
Good evening, Council. My name is Albertina Oliva, and I was born in San Jose, and I live in District 3, and I'm part of the Racial Equity Community Safety Committee. I also agree that you should have let the youth finish speaking. Interrupting them is only discouraging their civic engagement process. As mentioned earlier, the police are responding to various social challenges and are harming more BIPOC community members than it is helping. San Jose has the highest number of fatal encounters with the police in the Bay Area, and the vast majority were folks of color. My own family and myself do not feel comfortable around the police, and I feel represented in the RIPS report and the San Jose Community Survey by the SJSU Human Rights People's Budget. I am in strong support of the recommendations outlined by the RIPS committee, because RIPS has put forward a smart and thoughtful report with real solutions that would make our community safer for all of us. I please urge you to listen to your community and please work with us. Thank you for your time. I yield my time.
Veronica?
Great, thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Veronica Amador, and I am a member of the Race, Equity, and Community Safety Committee at Sacred Heart Community Service. I'm also a resident of District 5, and I am a strong support of the recommendations outlined by the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee. Recommendations because RIP has put forward a thoughtful report with real solutions for making our community safer for all. As a mother of children who suffer from mental health challenges and a resident of District 5, I am terrified of my children growing up. And I am terrified because I know, especially in District 5, as I see police patrolling my streets, you know, I wonder when that call is going to be to my children, specifically my middle children, who suffers from being very compulsive and unable to control many of his emotions. And as a mother, as he grows up, he becomes a threat to people, right? Right now, we're able to support him and he's a child. But even then, when is he going to, when is that phone call to the police going to be done? And how is the police going to react to his? And how are they going to support him? And the only thing that I've seen over and over, it's through a bullet that's going to go through his head, probably through his chest as well. And I will no longer have my little boy, right? It is the time now to reimagine for the safety of our children, to reimagine for a new future, a future where I know that I can let my children grow and that they're not going to be persecuted as criminals, that they're going to be instead supported for who they are and be able to grow and expand and be somewhere out there in the future. Thank you.
Jeffy?
Good evening, council members and Mayor Sam Liccardo. My name is Jeffy Costa, and I live here in San Jose with my children. And I just want to say I strongly support each of the 40 recommendations that are so thoughtful from the RIPS committee, especially from the Courageous Youth Council. These proposals are thoughtful and doable, and they will make our community safer and healthier and more equitable. These proposals come out of listening to the people that are most impacted, and like Veronica so courageously shared just a moment ago, like this is the safety of like innocent children that we're really appealing to you to think of them as your own children and make the changes in our community that will keep them truly safe and let them live their lives free from fear of harmful and fatal police contacts. These proposals focus on prevention and true safety and accountability, which our society needs more than ever. Implementing them will be an opportunity to create meaningful change and do something different and better. And that's what we're asking for. We believe in police-free, non-carceral solutions to the things that make our community challenged. And we want to see everybody's needs met in a way that's safe and rooted in compassion and dignity. Thank you.
Hector?
Good evening. My name is Hector Sanchez Flores. I serve as the Executive Director of the National Compadres Network, a national organization that works also here in Santa Clara County to create culturally rooted, healing-centered solutions for communities that have been affected by trauma. I am also a member of the REAL Coalition. I've attended many of the meetings and really respect the work that was put in to developing the recommendations that were put before the mayor and the city council. This committee has dedicated a lot of time to look at the root cause analysis and solutions that would help us develop strategies to better serve the community so that the community can feel safer. I was invited by the city of San Jose to serve as part of the vetting committee to hiring the new police chief. And to a T, each police chief that was interviewed, including the one that was selected, Anthony Mata, they indicated that more than law enforcement was needed to solve some of the problems that we can confront. So I look to you to weigh what those police chiefs and the selected police chief, how that compares with the solutions that are put forth by the RIPS committee. As a member of District 6, I want my children to return to a community and live in a community that is safe, that they feel a part of, and that they see that is not centered on law enforcement creating the definition of safety. Thank you and have a good evening.
Ms. Rayan?
Hello, yes. My name is Mr. Mendoza. I'm a community member and community navigator. And I want to thank the committee for the tools they're giving the mayor and the city council. I urge you to please follow the recommendations. Please, I work with a lot of people. And as one lady mentioned before, they have mental issues. And my biggest worry is they're going to encounter the police officers, and the police officers are not going to be able or know how to deal with the issue, and they're going to escalate it instead of de-escalate it. That's why these recommendations are very important as well, that they're coming from the youth. Okay, and we have to listen to the future. They are the future, and they put a lot of work into this. So I urge you, council, to please listen to these recommendations, and please stop criminalizing unhoused community members. They are not criminals. They just have a bad hand in their life. That's all they need. They need a little help, and that's all. You know, I'm been helping a couple of them. They've been getting jobs. They've been getting places to get a shower. That's the only thing that they want to do. They want to get back in the feet. And I think this recommendation is a good path to get to where we need to be. Thank you very much.
Lori?
Hi, my name is Lori Valdez, and I urge the mayor and the council to please
please accept these recommendations, because there's a lot of children that have been impacted by police violence. Myself, I'm an impacted family member, and my son, since he was 4, is growing up with the trauma that the police caused by killing his father, and his mental health and his physical health is being affected by it, because the system does not offer my son support, no kind of counseling, because we're not considered victims. My son is a victim of what the pattern of violence that the police continue to inflict on our communities. It's very hard to see police and teach our children to trust them when these men aren't being held accountable. We see it time and time again. Everybody wants to think that I'm against, or I hate police. Hate's a strong word, and I would never use that. I'm against the pattern of behavior that they get away with under the guise of that badge that they wear. That badge is for public trust. The trust is gone, and the only way they're going to be able to earn it back is by being held accountable. We've seen time and time again officers drunk on the jobs, officers killing themselves. You know, the officers are more of a public safety issue for us, because they're the ones that have the right to kill us. They have the right to drive drunk in public and not get held accountable. They have the right to sexually harass people. They have the right to do whatever they want because of their little contracts with the city. And I hope the city reconsiders signing contracts with them where we're not allowed to hold them accountable. It's time to put the kids first. My son Josiah and every child in Santa Clara County who's been impacted by police violence should be at the forefront of these decision-making tables. Thank you.
Darren? Darren?
Oh, sorry. Yep. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Hey, my name is Darren Seaton. I'm a resident of District 6, a parent, a homeowner, and a Little League baseball coach. I know a lot of police officers, and I worked with many professionally on community boards and together in coaching youth sports, and I appreciate the police and the difficult work that they do to combat serious crime. However, I can also tell you from my decades of experience working at Sacred Heart Community Service, where I've dealt with many mentally ill and unhoused neighbors, and talking to my police officer friends, that relying on police to address every social ill is not healthy for our community. The Reimagining Public Safety Committee, Community Advisory Committee, has put together a whole host of recommendations that are really common sense solutions that address the needs of all of our community. And I strongly urge you, Mayor and City Council, to seriously consider and accept the RIP's recommendations. I really want to be clear that these are not punitive measures against the police, but simply a way of reorienting the way that we look at public safety, where we invest pairing the correct professional with the problem at hand, rather than sending the police to address every problem that ails society. And I think that we've heard about a bunch of that tonight. Thank you very much.
Laura? Laura Sandoval?
There we go. My name is Laura Sandoval. I'm the regional director for PATH. Our organization is dedicated to ending homelessness. I support and am deeply inspired by the committee and the Youth Council's recommendations. I am grateful for their thorough research, for pulling together the voices of our neighbors, including those with direct experience, and for leading this conversation to invest in holistic practices that will strengthen our community, becoming a place where everybody feels safe and a sense of belonging. Thank you, Mayor Liccardo and the entire council for exploring these compassionate and proactive strategies. I look forward to our continued work together so all of our community members are safe and paired with skilled support during vulnerable times. Thank you.
Back to the council.
Thank you. Thank you to all the members of the community who spoke today. I know many of them served on the committee and appreciate their many hours of investment in helping us all reimagine the future of public safety. There are many recommendations here. A lot of work ahead of us, to be sure, but we appreciate an awful lot of work is already put in by many members of the community. I do want to explain, I know there was some concern about my encouraging the presentation to move along. We were told that the presentation would be 15 minutes in duration. It was, I think, at the 50-minute mark. And I had several indicators from colleagues that they had challenging commitments in various ways. And we also had many members of the public that we know we wanted to hear from. So that's why we were trying to move along. The important thing is that we get the information to the council. Certainly, there's a lot of written material, and we will encourage anyone who wants to submit more to do so as we move forward in this process. I think I saw Councilmember Jimenez had his hand up early, but I also know that Councilmember Prowse has his hand up. Councilmember Jimenez, did you want to jump in?
I would, Mayor. I would, and just give me a second. Yeah, thanks for those comments. Just the first thing I think is important to say is just thank you to the committee members, including the youth who presented, and a huge thank you to the many members who were not present, who committed time and energy in the furtherance of making our city a better place for all of us. And so wanted to express that appreciation. One of the things that was evident to me during the course of all the comments and the presentations is that that behind many of the comments, I would say most comments associated with the presentation, and of course the public comment that were shared, that there's a tremendous amount of feelings of heart and love for our community, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for that, because I think whether we agree with all the recommendations or the possibility of getting some of them done or whatever it may be, I think I'd like to think that we're all here for the same reason, for the same place, at the same place for the same reason. And so the other thing I wanted to share is that many of the comments as it relates to interaction with police and things of that nature, growing up in East San Jose, many of those comments resonated with me. But obviously in this role, I'm in a slightly different role, and some years have passed, but it's unfortunate that some of those same concerns, some of those same interactions continue to take place, and I'm certainly not blind to that. I also, just as it relates to the number of recommendations and just the amount of work before us, as you indicated, Mayor, is I think there are many recommendations that certainly, in my mind, warrant a more complete understanding and consideration, and some that seem, in my mind, as well, to seem like no-brainers, if you will. There's a lot here, and so I'm certainly going to be curious to hear from both my colleagues as well as the administration, and in one of my questions from some of the presenters, on how they envision us and how they desire us to move forward on the variety of the items that are listed. I think some of the things, for example, are already sort of moving forward, some of the discussions. I also, and I assume there's an acknowledgement from the committee that there are many requests here, right? Some that require more work than others, some that require resources, money, and some that, quite frankly, not everyone's going to agree on. Right. And so to that end, I had a question, and I was trying to think about who to pose this to. I guess, Boncho, you seem to be the leader of the pack, if you will. And so I'll pose this question to you, and then anyone else that wants to chime in. I know Darcy was on the call as well, but can you or someone from the committee share with us how you envision us as the city council in receiving this report? Sort of how you all envision, and I'm assuming there was conversations about this, but how you envision us tackling all these issues that you've put before us.
Thank you, Councilmember Jimenez, and again, I want to thank the more than 50 members of the committee and Chris Logan, who from my team that helped staff the process. But to answer your question, I think what we envision the next steps are, and we've started to schedule some conversations with members of the council just this past week, and we expect to be able to work with you as well. But we'd very much like to make sure that these recommendations don't get drowned out in the 400 other recommendations that you're dealing with from I think you're looking at 5 or somewhere between 5 and 7 processes they're receiving recommendations. We try to keep ours, we considered hundreds of them, but we want to make sure that some of them were able to continue. But we look at probably over the next few months, because we know it's going to be coming back to PISFIS and potentially other committees back in and back to the council in the fall as the administration continues to analyze these. We'd love to identify champions among you, members of the council, which of the presentations, which of the proposals that you feel would be ones that you would like to help invest some time and effort and energy into. And we have a whole panoply of organizations that have been working on these issues that bring a lot of expertise, not just lived experience expertise, to be able to bring to bear on helping to develop them, so that when the administration is bringing back in their consideration through both your prioritization process, through your budgeting processes that you are starting to conclude, I know at this particular point, to make sure that the resources are set aside to help develop, create analysis around, have community voice and partnership in, and we elucidate some of those recommendations in the report. So we look at this as being the starting line of the starting line, and we are nearly 2 years after the murder of Mr. Floyd, for us to be able to get moving again. So, so I think, to be as clear as possible, which of these are important to you as members of the council, and we want to partner with you over the next several months to help make sure that they can come to fruition. And like I said, many of them are no-brainers and can be passed on. We emphasized in our presentation tonight some of the priority ones, and we look forward to meeting with you, with your offices over the next few months, and to be able to make sure that things could actually become a reality.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That helps sort of frame, how you all envision moving forward, and I see it about the same way. I think sometimes during the course of public comment, one of the things I think it's important to highlight for members of the public that maybe don't join us often for council meetings, or maybe aren't familiar with the processes, but I would hate for some folks to, and I suspect maybe a few think this, but to the extent it needs to be highlighted, I think it'd be important for folks to understand that accepting the report tonight, approving this, as you suggest, is a starting line, right, if you will. And we aren't necessarily saying, hey, let's do it all, right? And so just to make sure that people have that understanding. But I appreciate your comments. I agree with you, and I look forward to working and finding those spaces that interest me more than others, if you will. The only other question I had, and then I'll pass it along to my colleagues, is some of the recommendations seem to me to capture some of what the city already does. Obviously, many of the recommendations are sort of digging into some of what maybe we should be doing, but some of them touch on some of the things we are doing. For example, there are comments around housing issues captured, I think, in recommendation 16. I think there might be a reference to commercial linkage fee and things of that nature, things that we've actively touched as a council. And even in the homeless-centered recommendations, there seem to be things that, in my mind, I think we're sort of doing already. And I mean, certainly we can improve and build upon. But what I'm curious about is, can you or anyone else share how those discussions within the committee sort of took place around was there an acknowledgement, like the city's already doing this? Did you guys dig into what we were doing, or is this like a wish list of sorts? And so those items that seem to indicate that, for example, what I just mentioned, commercial linkage fee, I'm not sure if everyone was aware that we already have one. We're actively sort of doing work around that. And so that got me to think that maybe everyone wasn't aware as to what we are already doing in some of these spaces. Can you take me through how some of those conversations took place?
Absolutely, Councilmember Jimenez. I think what we were doing during the process was we actually had public hearings and meetings, and we had a variety of different committees, in some cases multiple committees, actually looking at the current state of affairs of things that we're doing and acknowledging the fact that there's work that's happening, but there's work that needs to happen to strengthen that. There have been conversations, particularly in the recommendation around affordable housing, as you mentioned. There's talking about what are we doing with that? How do we lift those up to more regional levels and standards that we see from some of our other partner cities? I know it's still a relatively new tool that we've utilized, a commercial linkage fee, and it's one that has not been like fully implemented yet. And I think the idea is there is consciousness around the breadth of the work that we're doing right now, but it's an area that we would like to see. We would like to continue to partner with you and strengthen. But speaking specifically to the recommendations around homelessness and alternative homeless response and others, those were informed by deeper conversations that we had as Chad Bojarquez was able to articulate, work that we've been doing with the Lived Experience Advisory, body, and other, meetings and forums and focus groups that we did to try to look at, we need to be able to strengthen some of the work that's happening there and the partnerships there and investments in those. And so there was a deep level of analysis around that, but we also understand that we weren't going to try to create an affordable housing plan as part of this particular study, but rather to be able to emphasize some of the things. So one of the key recommendations, obviously, is the implementation of COPA.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I know as an example, the housing department is doing some work around that already. And I know that, it's an active part of conversations that are taking place already. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Those are all the questions I had, all the comments I had up to this point. A lot of information, trying to digest it all and trying to figure out what items are more of interest to me than others and such. And so I guess with that, and I'll let the city manager or the city attorney stop me if I'm doing this inappropriately, but I'd like to move acceptance of the report. And I assume that the moving of the acceptance of the report just brings it forward as it's stated in some of the staff report and such.
I'll second.
Check.
Thank you.
All right, it was moved and seconded. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. And first off, thank you as well to the RIPS committee and all the members that participated, the youth as well, the members of the public that spoke today, and everybody that's really devoted a lot of time to this effort, our city staff as well, Chief Mata, and just really, I think the tremendous effort that went into this very extensive report, and one of many, as Poncho just mentioned, that we have received in what is a pretty robust effort on being able to reimagine public safety here in San Jose. It was 5 days after George Floyd was murdered that I actually reflecting on my own work as a police officer and my work on the council here, my youth experience growing up here in San Jose, that I drafted a memo where I indicated that the terminology reimagining policing is what I had put in that memo, but that ultimately started a conversation that we had here at the council, and our vice mayor requested some funding to start that process 2 years ago of a community-led effort to have this conversation. Ultimately, one that our first try at it failed, and we ultimately hit the reset button, and rightfully so. And I think with the good stewardship of Angel Rios, who's here, and our city manager's team, allowed the effort to be more community-led, and that's where we've come up with these recommendations here. And so I'm glad that we've navigated through that, and it is a little bit delayed, but I think it's all coming really together at a time where we have a tremendous amount of opportunity to be able to look at how we can reimagine public safety here in San Jose. And I wanted to speak to what Councilmember Jimenez was, just to be very clear with everybody that's participating with us, what the next steps look like. First off, the motion that we have in the very first page of the memo that staff has out kind of outlines the recommendation very well, and I may have a small change to that, but just to make it very clear, referring the recommendations that are all the recommendations contained in this report, with the exception of 21, 22, and 23, which as it states as to why, but that the analysis, operational implementation considerations, budget, workload, all of that consideration will come back, that analysis, to the Public Safety Finance and Strategic Support Committee that I chair in the fall. And it's going to come with a comprehensive review of all outstanding recommendations for reform and operational improvement being tracked by the police department. And just to highlight what we have going on there, as Poncho had indicated, we have audits, we have the independent police auditor yearly reports, we have the use of force report, the 21st century policing report, and then the very lengthy internal and independent after action reports from the 2020 protests. And now these. Do we, Angel, do you have off the top of your head, or do we have a tally of how many in total? Now, there are many that are overlapping, so So it'll sound very big at first, and it is big, but there's some that overlaps. But how many total recommendations are we expecting to come back to PISFIS in the fall? And sorry, PISFIS is the short terminology for the Public Safety Finance and Strategic Support Committee. But how many do we have coming back for that analysis?
And Angel, after you answer that question, I want to just jump in about one issue of clarification. Go ahead,
Sure.
Angel.
All right. Yeah, Councilmember, given all those things that you mentioned, all those different inputs, including the recommendations from RIPS and the Youth Council, we're at 421 to be specific, to be exact. And the thinking is this, is that between now and the fall is to really bifurcate these in terms of really doing a deep analysis around those that directly involve the San Jose Police Department, and they'll be reviewed kind of from that perspective. Of course, we'll also be looking at those from the lens of a legal lens, meet and confer lens, and any other lens that we need to apply to it that would impact, operations. And in addition to that, we're looking at bringing in multiple departments to also provide some additional review, because as you can see from some of the recommendations today, there are some intersecting points with a good number of these that involve current work that's either currently being done or planned on being done. And so our goal is to really vet these recommendations in a way that we can bring something meaningful, something that's actionable, and then something that is costed out, so that we could go forward strategically and make sure that we make the best of these recommendations.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, let me clarify, because I know that a motion was made to accept the report. That's not exactly what the recommendation is, because accepting the report doesn't make anything happen. So I just want to go to Councilmember Jimenez. Did you intend to approve the recommendation specifically that the staff has offered on the cover page of the memo?
Yes, Mayor, that was the intent.
Okay. And that's okay with the seconder. That's the motion.
Yeah, that was me. I thought I heard that in his comments.
Oh,
But yeah.
forgive me.
No,
Okay.
no worries. Yeah.
All right, great.
Good to make it clear. So, because yeah, that's what is intended. So thank you for that. The second part of the recommendations from staff, obviously, that touches on recommendations 21, 22, and 23, and an opportunity coming back as well in our roadmap prioritization process. So there's a little bit there of a separate sort of path of work. Did you want to address that, Angel?
Yeah, Councilmember. Yeah, we wanted to pull those out and separate those, because those are recommendations that potentially require a ballot measure. And just given the preliminary assessment, I mean, we wouldn't be able to get to the ballot until 2024. And so we wanted to take those out and separate those. They also mirror almost exactly the recommendations by the Charter Commission. And so we do have a city roadmap exercise happening on May 16th here with council, and we figured we would defer those recommendations to that process, and then the mayor and council can really vet those in the context of all the other competing interests.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to mention that as well. Next Monday, we'll have that prioritization, and there's a lot of things on that list as well separately that don't have to do anything with maybe the public safety or police reimagining public safety work. The only change that I was potentially going to bring up, and Councilmember Jimenez did briefly touch on it, recommendations 16, 17, 18, and 19. I kind of feel like those may fit into a different bucket as well, versus coming back to the Public Safety Committee in the fall, similar to what we were just talking about, 21, 22, and 23, because they don't directly relate to a lot of the public safety work or under our police chief's purview. Things like, again, the Community Opportunity Purchase Act, which we know is already coming right at another date, Commercial Linkage Fee Program, SB 9 implementation, or was your thought that when you come back in the fall that you would just have a response to those and say, these actually exist in another body of work that the council is already doing? So that was it. With those four, I thought could also today maybe already be redirected to another path.
Yeah, actually, you raise a good point, and that we just did a cursory review of these recommendations. We haven't done the in-depth, thorough analysis. The ones that we identified preliminarily that we know would trigger a specific ballot measure, those are the ones that we bifurcated. I think it's safe to say that, 19, we were kind of on the bubble. We were kind of on 19 could potentially be added to that list as well.
I mean,
Yep.
it's definitely a ballot measure, right? So that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it would make sense to perhaps add 19 to that list, and
Okay.
then the other ones would be kind of reviewed in the context of those various lenses that I mentioned earlier in terms of legal, labor, et cetera.
Okay, so we can bring those back. For instance, again, just on the 16, say, and 18, wage theft work, right? These are things that are already prioritized, some stuff that we're already working on, like COPA, that I think when you come back in the fall, at least, I just don't want their expectation, right, that there's a whole new body of work going on these, that there's pre-existing work happening there, and that can come back at that, that can stay on that particular lane. Okay, so maybe that would be the only change, if then specifically would be 19.
19.
In the motion, Councilmember Jimenez, that gets lumped in with 21, 22, and 23, if you're comfortable with that.
I'm okay with that. I was actually going to mention that there was another ballot measure sort of directive in there. And so, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And I see that I'm running out of time here in my first 10 minutes. So I will hold the rest of my comments or thoughts, and I'll just say I do thank, again, everybody for the robust recommendations. I look forward to the conversation as it comes back, as I am chair of the Public Safety Committee, and being able to dive deeper into all these recommendations. Next.
Thank you. Other members of the council like to speak? Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you. I think this is working. I'm having hotspot issues. So thank you everyone for coming out and all the partners in putting together the report. I did have the larger report here, and so was trying to follow along earlier. And one of the things, so I look forward to the analysis. I would like to see that. One of the things that I'd like to ask for in that analysis is, as we talk about different community responses to be as part of the menu, just speaking from my experience in District 7, gang violence had gone up prior to the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, it was just there was just a lot of really awful stuff that happened. In fact, it was just a whole lot of really horrible shootings, homicides, a lot of things that went up in District 7. And which is why I, fought hard, and thank you to my fellow council members who voted to approve additional funding for BEST in the budget last year, so that we could delve in to look at what we need in terms of oversight, in terms of a system as we create the next round of grant requests, and take that time to get input from the best partners, from the community directly, especially communities impacted. Impacted in my district. I know we've had a lot of hot spots in District 7. But one of the things that those discussions, those were the positive things that came out of those discussions. Those discussions actually started out of a frustration that we did not have accountability, we did not have oversight. And in fact, we had a lot of shootings where the partners did not deploy. They did not go out into the community. And that was really hard. And so what I asked for in the analysis is that when we look at these grants, that we include that accountability and transparency, that we include enough funding to be able to do that, so that when we do it right. And so that's what I'm going to ask for in the analysis, particularly in the best types of aspects of this of the report. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Foley.
Thank you. I really just want to take an opportunity to thank Poncho and the committee, the RIPS committee, for putting together this really thoughtful presentation and to really involve the voices of our youth in the committee as well. It's very important that we hear from our young people as to what they're thinking as it relates to public safety. So I really appreciate all of the voices that were here, and I'm thankful and grateful to hear your words and your thoughts about this. I also want to thank the Charter Commission for their recommendations too. They had extensive reviews over this very similar issues. And I want to thank actually all the community members who came in and spoke in person and virtually. And this is the benefit of having a hybrid meeting where people can participate virtually and still be active without getting in their car and driving down to City Hall. So I want to thank you all for being there and presenting to us, and your comments about the importance of this and the how long ago the George Floyd murder was and how long this has taken is not lost on me, but it's important that we do this work thoughtfully and correctly, that we not rush it and get it wrong, because it does involve a lot of partners, and one of those partners is the San Jose Police Department. Recognizing that much of the work is about reforms at the police department to be implemented that could benefit their officers in a huge way too, by removing some of the responsibilities that they have now that maybe could go to community service officers. So I really look forward to what comes back to the from the city, from staff to the council member paralysis committee, and going forward. And I want to make sure that, as Molly McLeod said, I always listen to Molly's words because she's so thoughtful and heartfelt and passionate and has a lot of, unfortunately, lived experience in this regard. But she hopes that results is something meaningful. And Molly, I hope so too. I also heard the voice of Christine, I think, hoping to advocate for Office of Disability Affairs. And again, we're in budget session, so I'm hoping to get that out there at some point as well. The one thing I wanted to add or just get clarifications from you, Angel, and I heard you a little bit, but with regards to item 16, that really is something that we are looking at and bringing forward eventually through CED. So is it your intent then that you'll look at all of these items and then peel them off for the committees that are already in process? Well, like we're already investigating COPA. It's met at our committee twice now, I think. And we've also discussed the commercial linkage fee comes there as well as it comes to city council. So are you going to look at these items in all of them and see which one may already be duplicated somewhere else?
That is correct, council member. To the extent that work is already being done and work advanced, we'll note that in the analysis, and we'll keep that with its current structure. So our goal is not to slow any of that work down, but to rather acknowledge that it's being done somewhere specifically in the city. So yeah, that is correct.
Okay, great. With that really concludes my comments and my questions, and I look forward to supporting the motion. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Councilmember Pross, did you want to speak again? I saw your line.
Yeah, but I think I saw somebody else's hand come up that hasn't spoken yet.
Okay.
Councilmember Mahan. I'm happy to wait.
Trying to pull this up. Here we go. Is that Councilmember Mahan?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'll be quick. I also want to add my thanks to everyone who worked on the very thorough report and presented it this evening, including our youth representatives and all the public speakers. I appreciate all of the thought that has gone into this, and very much think it's appropriate to focus in on those with lived experience and hear those stories. And we heard some very heartfelt and in some cases, I think, heartbreaking, personal stories this evening. And I appreciate everyone who shared those. One of the things I'm reflecting on and trying to reconcile in my own experience is both the very real and very valid experiences we heard this evening, as well as what I also very frequently hear in the community as I'm out and about, not just in my own district, which is quite frequently, I'm almost surprised by how frequently people bring up police staffing in their desire to see more of it, or their desire to see more engagement or more foot patrols, more community policing. And I believe these are reconcilable. I don't think we're forced into having either ors or trading these things off. Obviously, we live in a world of constrained resources, so there are difficult trade-offs we have to make, and yet I think both perspectives, both experiences, or the diversity of them can all be valid and true. But I suppose the question that comes to mind, and I don't know if it's a question to answer tonight or more something to think about as we move forward here, is how do we bring those different perspectives together in a productive dialogue to get to that place of balance where we're serving all the different needs in the community? And that was something I didn't quite hear directly addressed this evening. I'm just throwing that out there as something I'm really, I'm grappling with, and I'm curious as this analysis comes back to our department. I don't know if this question is more for Poncho and the other presenters this evening, or it may also be for city staff as we think about the analysis coming back and discussions in various committees. How do we ensure that we're really hearing from the full breadth and diversity of our city and creating a productive dialogue when these can be very difficult conversations? And I want to make sure we hear from all voices and get to a synthesis that actually really reflects the whole city and serves the whole city well. So I understand that's not really an answerable question, but I'd love to hear a perspective. I saw Poncho's hand go up, so I'll stop and would love to hear what your thoughts are.
So thank you, Councilmember Mahana. I just want to say, obviously, it's not an easily answerable question, but one of the things that we actually grappled with pretty heavily in the conversation, because we said as one of the preconditions for our conversation to understand why we're here in the first place, and to remind ourselves of the fact that we've been working for a very long time on these issues of public safety and policing and some of the challenges that we face in terms of bias and force and other types of things that have been very unfortunate. But rather than dwelling on those conversations, we said, what makes our community safer in the first place? And we did some additional polling. We talked to many members of our community, and we said, let's look at trying to achieve a better balance in terms of prevention and being able to utilize law enforcement in ways that could be much more constructive, utilize those precious resources that we have and the challenges that law enforcement faces, but being able to bolster some of the other responses and the partnerships. And we were really looking forward to that dialogue about how do we get the right professionals to be able to respond to the right circumstances and get people the support they need. I think one of the stories that I heard tonight in the testimony that was most meaningful to me is actually hearing the story of a young woman who had been struggling with addiction. And when there was a law enforcement professional that said, instead of just reflexively dealing with this person and perhaps violations of the law, and said, let's get you these resources and support, it changed their life. And those are the kind of tools that law enforcement needs. And those are the kind of things that are happening that we hope to partner with you to invest in. And that's not just a city issue, it's a county issue, it's a community-based organization issue. And we all want to be able to do it. And I think that's the pathway that you're talking about moving forward. I think I heard some of your words to this effect at a PISPIS meeting just a few months ago. It's like, how much are we partnering with our community-based organization partners, and can we invest in developing more robust tools, and we have a deeper connection and partnership rather than just saying, let's invest more resources in training of law enforcement to be something that they're not. How can we make sure we get the resources to people that could actually help them and make our community safer in the first place? And I think that's my long answer to an unanswerable question. but we're really excited to be at the starting point of some really fascinating things, and really to also remember, you know, the voices of young people and how they're in some ways is disproportionately affected by all these issues, and making sure that they are part of that conversation as well, not just some of us who've been around too long trying to do the same thing over and over again.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. And as we have discussed at PISFIS, I mean, I'm certainly really supportive of bringing all those different disciplines and tools to the table, and certainly around addiction and mental health. I think we realize that, I certainly realize that our criminal justice system and what we're currently doing is not sufficient. I also want to make sure that in the conversation, we also recognize the necessary and important role our law enforcement officers play, and that we're also focused on helping them be really effective in that role, and that they feel supported, and that they have the tools that they need to be effective in carrying out their essential function. I'll wrap up in a second, but I guess Angel or Jennifer, anyone, is there anything else you wanted to add? Apologize for not being there in the room with you on just as we move forward, how we ensure beyond what our council offices are doing, that we are soliciting and incorporating the true breadth of experience and opinion out there in the community on the role of and future of policing and public safety and this whole process.
Yeah, Councilmember, I guess what I would add is this, is that, you know, from day one, we know with this issue, you know, when you look at the continuum of possible solutions, you know, there's going to be divergent perspectives on the issues, right? And it's important that we create room for those divergent perspectives. And in doing so, we know that those divergent opinions are bound to collide. And sometimes it results in stalemate. Sometimes it results in frustration and anger and all other things. And I think that's part of the process. It's a messy process. But I think at the end of the day, if we truly center this work in community, then that means we also respect those divergent perspectives and make room for them. And secondly, if we truly stay true to the spirit of this work, then we know that reasonable people all share or all agree that in equitable justice and neighborhood safety. And if we could just keep focused on that, I think we'll do some good work. And I think that's really what has evolved over the course of this process more recently.
Great, thank you, Angel. I appreciate that, and look forward to the rest of the conversation this evening and in the weeks, months, and years ahead. And thank you again to everyone who helped put together this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, any other comments from my colleagues? Councilmember Prowse, like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple more points and teeing off what Councilmember Mahan said. I absolutely think this is going to be a pretty long body of work. Some of these things will take more time. For instance, the next PISFIS meeting is going to happen on a Thursday starting at 1:30. So having the youth voice is probably going to be pretty difficult at those meetings. So I could see where, again, when we hear back there and some of these, as we've talked about today, may be pretty lower hanging fruit and we may be able to move forward. Others may take more time, things like they have to go to a ballot, and some may be controversial. And so I think I see in the future where there's an opportunity where even more public engagement, right, and dialogue with our stakeholders that are here that have already participated, and then as Councilor Mahan said, expanding and inviting others to that conversation, especially on the more controversial issues, where we, and have those discussions and invite the public to participate more robustly, and not just keep it focused, say, in a committee meeting that may not be as inviting time-wise for everybody to participate. So I see all of that, in our near and more distant future. Just speaking to a couple of the items as I was looking through it again, we have an opportunity with our negotiations with the San Jose Police Officers Association on the next contract, and it provides an opportunity, and it may be a couple-year contract, right? So this opportunity may not present itself for a couple years. So I'd just like to see if we can look at some of the recommendations. For instance, happen to present itself at a press conference where the chief and the mayor spoke to it, but recommendation number 32, talking about mandatory drug testing. There is an opportunity with hiring. There's some recommendations here, 42, 43, maybe not so much 42, but say 43 or 44, it's a talking about preference points or incentive pay upon hiring for San Jose residents. I think some of these things could find their way into the discussion of our current negotiations. So kind of going back to what Councilmember Foley was saying, and then what I was saying, and Councilmember Jimenez, as you look through this, let's not just put everything into the bucket of coming back to PISPIS in the fall. If you can also look at it in regards to the numbers I just suggested, right? Some of this may and should find its way to the council and Jennifer Shembry's office, right, through our negotiations with the POA that are happening soon.
Yeah, Councilmember, you're absolutely right. And our intent is not to just add more process to this, but rather really look at the low-hanging fruit, look at those items that are actionable, that are doable, that are fundable, things that really can't wait until the fall, right? And that we take immediate action and identify those things. Like, for example, there's a number of recommendations that intersect with homeless response, others with mental health response, others with pre-release of incarcerated individuals. There's a number of efforts, a number of recommendations that intersect with current and planned work. So we're going to jump on those first. And so even if that means, even at the risk of maybe coming back to PISVIS and saying, well, we started moving these in advance because it just made, good sense to do so, right? And so we're gonna really lean more towards action. I think that's the best thing we could do to kind of respect the process and the community input that many have gone through.
Yeah, thanks, Angel. I just want to pipe in. With our last contract between the city and the Police Officers Association, we did have a side letter related to police reforms. I think that's what you're recalling, council member. And I think, even if we don't have everything ironed out about what it is, they have indicated a willingness to talk about these things, even if we don't have it all ironed out of what it might look like. So I think we'll make sure everything's coordinated as we go into negotiations.
Great, thank you. And then last one, just looking over the Youth Commission recommendations or Youth Committee recommendations. There also may be some in there that say, for instance, the establishing the police chief as an elected position, that would also make its way to the level of something that would have to go to the ballot. So if you want to just scan through those, I think as well, and it's like that one, right, we can kind of pick it out already and likely say something like that should then fall into that same category of these discussions that are going to be in a different path because they would require something like a ballot initiative. Okay, that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, I think that's everyone who would like to speak. So we do have a motion, which is the staff recommendation that will refer these recommendations for committees and commissions for additional work. Are there any final comments? Not, let's vote.
Jimenez,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Davis,
Yes.
Esparza,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Liccardo.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our agenda. We now have time for open forum.
Okay, as a reminder, open forum is not to address items that were already heard on the agenda. I have a person in public who doesn't have a name, but it's California Sea Kings. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Carla Lobo. I'm here on behalf of the California Sea Kings, professional basketball team here in San Jose. We are an organization recognized professionally through the TBL across 50 states and over 100 different countries. Our Showcase League delivers delightful, impactful, and family friendly environment here in San Jose. We're personally wanting to invite each and every one of you to our home game that's going to take place this Saturday on May 14th at 3 p.m. We will be honoring our community here in District 7 for embracing us and asking us to come in and help with the youth in mentoring financial literacy and also inspiring them in different forms in our organization. So we would love the opportunity for one of you all to accept the gift that we'll be giving the community, a signed ball of all our professional athletes. And we're also going to be inviting the Franklin McKinley School District, which a lot of their children are the ones that come to our home games. They've attended our basketball camps that we've had there in collaboration with Silicon Valley Sports Center, located on 2099 South 10th Street. So we invite you. You can follow us on all social media platforms at Cali C Kings. You can also follow us our website at ckingsbasketball.com. And I am Carla, the CEO, and I also have Mr. Stallworth that's here in the audience, that is the owner of the team. And so we would like to just formally invite you all, but also thank you for the opportunity of allowing us to be a service to your community. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could suggest that perhaps connect with Tony so you can get the email addresses for our offices so we can get all the details and folks can show up that way. Thank you very much.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. A reminder of open public policies and accountability with technology. They really have an important function towards civil rights and civil protections as ideas towards peace and ideas of open democracy and community sustainability. Reimagine racial equity, health and human services, all of these ideas are working towards these things at this time. Medicare for all, workers' rights issues, tenants' rights issues. There's a list of things we can really be working on as a full community process, and that can really invite all parts of the community. And I mean all parts that are, disaffected, disassociated, and the criminal element that doesn't feel that nothing works for them. All of these items speak to a full community process, and that community can work with government. And so I thank you and how we'll be making these efforts this summer. There can be good community sessions this summer that I feel can take place. Good luck in our efforts. And interestingly, all of this is the ideas of that, we're trying to address, the era of 9/11 that we created that was kind of a disaster. And we're trying to say sorry for that. And I think we can look at what's going on in the Ukraine area right now and just fully understand that they could have negotiated a peace process possibly instead of using war. And it's important Russia understands that at this time, and Ukraine too. And that, they're going to have to come back to the negotiation table one day and work on salvaging what is a peace for the area. It's not through a scorched earth policy. It's through policies like what we're trying to learn how to practice here. They have to learn themselves. Let's hope we can start all doing that now. Thanks.
Sean.
Hello. I'd like to let you all know that there is there's a danger right now that the CZU fire chiefs and fire directors are battling. They're trying not to lose their right of way into some of the open space and redwood forests up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Henry Cowell Redwood State Park and the Pogonip open space. They may lose their ability to use the rail and the service roads there. Now, they want to use the rails to bring in water tankers and suppressant and supplies. Now, 5 chiefs and 2 directors made a public statement with the help of the San Lorenzo Valley Post. There's been an effort to privatize part of the rail corridor, limiting freight in any area for any reason cuts off our firefighters from being able to use what they say is a key tool. This should scare the hell out of anybody. I've already let another prominent council member know about this. I haven't seen anyone spreading any news. This could help lead to making the next catastrophic wildfire so much worse. Who in their right minds would allow their neighbors to limit their wildfire fighters' ability to do their job safely and effectively. San Lorenzo Valley Post.
Back to the council.
Thank you. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.